I want to welcome you to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Please take note of our graphic, our fancy warning graphic. It tells you that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. We sometimes say we may curse or drink an adult beverage to reinforce this concept. We normally do not do either. However, we just want to make sure that everyone knows this is not a show for children. Anyhow, I want to welcome you to the show. My name is Dave Beatty, and I am one of your hosts for nearly the last 30 years. I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer, worked on a lot of fun things some people have heard of. Let's see. Let's find some different things to talk about. Worked on a lot of fun sketch card gigs for things like Vampirella, Lady Death, Batman the Legend, Superman the Legend, a lot of Marvel projects. And I think that's good. Enough about that. Anyhow, I want to welcome back also my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks hopefully watching or listening at home some of the fun things that you have done as a creative professional.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14, Bass God 14. That's not Bass God. That's Bass God as in like bass guitar. So I am Bass God 14. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions, which is a small production company based in Arizona. And I am also the associate producer of the feature film Occupants, which features Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo and is currently streaming for free on Tubi.
Awesome. Very cool. We are going to hopefully have a special guest tonight. We are experiencing a few technical difficulties. So as always, bear with me if you see me looking off camera doing something frantic. I'm probably trying to check something or try to correspond with someone to figure out what's wrong. And I am still kind of fighting a little bit of a cold, so I will still be popping cough drops. My apologies in advance for that. All right, so we're going to start off things a little bit different this episode. We're actually going to start off this episode by actually talking about Picard, the fourth episode of Picard. I don't have a little fancy graphic actually prepared for it, other than we'll use our main feature one graphic here. Eric will show the screen. So we're going to start off talking about the latest episode of Star Trek Picard. This is episode 4. Tell me, Eric, how did you feel about the episode Absolute Candor? And please feel free to display absolute candor.
Well, what can I say? We tried to start out a little bit spoiler-free, so, with general impressions. So if any of you out there that are viewing this haven't seen the episode and don't want to be spoiled, we'll give you some general impressions first before we get into sort of the deep dive of the episode. So my overall impression is that it's probably about the same level as episode 3 for me. For me right now, the low point is episode 2. I really hated that episode. But this episode, I think, was more on par with episode 3. There were some things I really didn't like. I'm liking Raffi less and less. Like every time I see her, I just don't like kind of her tone and the way, just her attitude towards Picard. It seems very dismissive, which seems to be the general attitude of the characters towards Picard in general. It's kind of interesting. It's weird to me because there seems to be this kind of Picard hate fest going on in the world of Star Trek Picard. Everybody seems to have a problem with him. Sometimes for reasons that don't make any sense, they have a problem with him. It's for me as a hardcore Trekkie, it's very, I don't know, it's very off-putting to me. That they keep treating him like garbage.
Right.
And Raffi in particular, even after they kind of come to some sort of obvious meeting of the mind, she's on the mission, she still kind of treats him like he's like a senile old man, which I guess he will be. I mean, we know he has some sort of senility dementia problem that he's going to be experiencing. We know that from All Good Things. And we know that from the series itself, where he met with his doctor from in a previous episode, he met with his doctor from the Stargazer, and they reinforced that concept, which I also thought was kind of weird because it's like we all know that already. But I mean, Okay, but that's okay. So, yeah, I didn't hate this episode. I'll say that I didn't hate this episode. Um, I wasn't, thrilled with again with a lot of the interaction of the characters with Picard. Like I said, Picard just seems to be hated by everybody in the universe at this point. But as far as the story goes, it was okay. We got two new characters in this. Well, one's an old character, and we got a new character in this. And I have some interest in both of them. I'm not totally like I'm not like I don't care. I mean, I'm interested. They introduced some elements in this one that are kind of that could be fascinating. We can talk about them a little bit more in the deep dive. But my overall impression is I didn't hate it, but I didn't. The attitude towards Picard is very off-putting to me as a hardcore fan. I have a problem with that.
Well, my feelings about the episode was it was okay. I'm going to say something a bit, maybe potentially like something that other people would agree with. Put it that way. Maybe a little bit questionable lapse in judgment. There's a few episodes of Star Trek Discovery, in all honesty, I liked better than some of these episodes of Picard. This episode was fine. I enjoyed seeing the old school Romulan. We're avoiding spoilers. Just overall impression. It was fine. That's going to be my entire takeaway from this particular episode. I liked it better. I liked it better than the second episode. I would agree with you. The second episode for me is also the lowest point in the show. I did not like the second episode. I like some of the dynamic between some of the characters, the scientist, doctor character, the artificial life expert, the synth expert lady. Like I kind of like her. She's kind of fun and interesting. I like the captain of the ship.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say with her though, whether you like it or not, she's kind of like the comic relief of the team.
Yeah, she definitely is. And I like the captain's. I like There's a lot of things going on with the captain that I like. I like the captain of the ship. I can't remember the name of the ship half the time. This is another episode that I watched once, and I just didn't want to watch it again.
You're talking about Rios, right? The captain is Rios.
Yeah, Rios. Pilot. I like Rios. Yeah,
I don't have a problem with Rios, and I am kind of fascinated by what he's done with his emergency holograms and the fact that they're all him.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I really like that and how they're very different. So the show has some things that I am enjoying, and some things like I did not dislike one of the newer characters that was introduced in this episode. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but when I saw what they were doing about it, again, we're avoiding spoilers. I kind of liked some of that. But in terms of the episode as a whole, it's still better than the second episode. I don't think it's better than the first episode. I think I might have liked this one maybe a little bit better than the third episode. So I'd have to say, besides the first episode, this is probably my favorite. But I don't know. The show for me is not bad. It's interesting. But I do agree with you. I am finding some of the attitude towards Picard to be very, very off-putting. And it's hard for me to understand why, everyone who knows who Picard is apparently has an issue with him. It's getting kind of old. You know what I mean? Like, even
that's my biggest gripe.
Yeah,
I'm kind of getting sick of it.
Yeah. This whole the Federation sucks is, I enjoy the show when they're not picking on the Federation. And unfortunately, they pick on the Federation a lot. They find a lot of time to take the Federation out of the shed and hit it with a stick and then push it back into the shed. So I would like for them to be done with that. So that's my official review. It was okay. I liked it. I still don't think any of them is as good as the first. I like the first episode probably the best. I feel like I'm missing like the visions of Brent Spiner.
Yeah, no, I agree
I
with
wish
you.
we get more visions of Brent Spiner. So like,
Yeah,
you
yeah. Why
know,
not? Why not?
yeah. So
Um,
that's kind of my thing.
yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, I agree with you in terms of ranking of the episodes. I do think episode one is the best episode so far. It's the best episode I've seen. Uh, that first scene is my favorite scene so far in Picard. The scene of Data and Picard sitting together, playing cards on the Enterprise D. Um, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that, and even though there were some issues I had with the episode, so far it's really my favorite episode of Star Trek Picard. So I would agree with you in terms of kind of ranking the episodes. One is the best so far. Uh, two is really the low point of the series so far, and four is better than two at least.
Yeah, I would have to say, yeah, like I said, for me, I liked I liked this one probably about the best. I enjoyed the action that was in it, but again, we're trying to avoid spoilers, so I can't talk too much more about it because I'm already fighting the urge to kind of spoil something as it currently sits. Um, and I want to do. Is that good for Picard?
Well, we're going to get the spoilers, right? Deep dive.
Okay, spoiler. So spoil. All right, spoiler time. Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk spoilers for obviously for Star Trek Picard. So if you haven't seen the episode, if you don't want to know any spoilers, now is the time to look away or go get something to drink for a couple minutes and come right back because we have a great show planned tonight. So we're getting Picard kind of taken care of here on the front end, and then we're going to get into our other topics. I don't want to spend too much more time on that because I'm already talking it to death. So let's see spoilers.
Should we introduce our special guest? It looks like he's ready to go.
Yes.
Go ahead and introduce him.
Let's do that. I want to welcome to the show. This is Professor Hugo Strange. He is coming to us from some undisclosed location deep in the bowels of Arkham Asylum. I want to welcome you to the show, Professor, or Dr. Hugo Strange. My bad.
It's Doctor.
Yes, sorry about that. So Dr. Hugo Strange is here with us. We're going to be discussing the enigmatic clown prince of crime later in the episode, also known as the Joker. And Dr. Hugo Strange has been gracious enough to come on the show, and he is going to help us discuss. He's one of your former patients. Is that correct, Doctor?
Yes, he's one of my former patients, unfortunately.
All right, very cool. We appreciate you and glad to have you here on the show. So we're going to finish talking about Picard here, Dr. Strange, if that's okay.
That's fine. You can speak about him. All he's doing is clamoring to get back on a ship.
All right. Well, there you go. So, spoilers for Picard. Do you mind if I go first, Eric?
Go ahead.
I love what they're doing with Rios with the different holograms. Just the different, and I really like that actor. For me, he is probably the standout on the show so far. I hope that his tragic Starfleet background isn't something that really makes me cringe because right now I really like his character. The new character, I think, was it Elnor, the Romulan elfin guy. I like the fact that they're echoing back to Dune and the idea of the God, I can't believe I can't remember what it's called. Because there's the Order of the Sisterhood in Dune, and it seems like they're echoing back to that. That stuff's kind of interesting. I liked his character just fine. I like the doctor, the female scientist character. She's interesting. The synth expert is really I'm enjoying her character. I could take or leave Raffi at this point. It's really getting on my nerves. Kind of like what you were saying earlier. I love the introduction of the Romulan warbird, the old style Romulan warbird, and I really like that battle sequence. I thought that was kind of fun, where you see Rios flying the ship. Rios for me is the character that's standing out to me. I really like Rios. And in terms of what was revealed in the episode, we didn't really get a whole lot revealed. Just Picard went to the planet. He picked up this essentially Romulan warrior nun assassin character, and then they battled the bird of prey. I found the battle sequence to be fun, and then of course the big twist at the end. 7 of 9 is on the ship. They do mention the Fenris Rangers, and then eventually she shows up later in the episode and actually helps them actually take out the prey. All that stuff was fun. And like I said, I like this. This is probably one of the better episodes to me. First episode's still the best. And that's all my thoughts. I like Rios. I enjoy the action sequence. The new characters, kind of interesting. I like the fact they're harkening back to Dune. That's all I got. What about you, Eric?
All right, well, let's start at the beginning. So the sort of, I guess, interesting reveal, if you could call it, that we start out with is we find out where Picard was when the Utopian Planitia starship yards, the dockyards, the where they were building the ships. We find out where Picard was when the attack happened. And apparently he was at a planet where they were already resettling Romulans.
Right.
The supernova hadn't occurred yet. They were in the process. Picard was still an admiral, although for some reason he shows up in civilian clothes, which I didn't quite understand that. That whole look was a little weird to me. It was very like, Panama, I don't know.
Very Panama Jack.
Yeah, that's exactly
exactly
it. Yeah, I thought that was a little weird. It's like, okay, he's still in Starfleet. Why can't we just see him in his uniform at least one more time? You know what I mean? So that irritated me a little bit. But anyway, he goes down to the planet. We establish this relationship with these Romulan warrior nuns we've never heard about before, but apparently have been around forever. And they're the bestest warriors in the universe. That's from Kurtzman, by the way, because that's what Kurtzman said in the Ready Room. He actually said they're the best in the universe, which is okay. Yeah, whatever. All right, because obviously Kurtzman made them, so they have to be the best, right? Obviously, that was probably his contribution to the episode. That kind of stuff annoys me. I don't think you have to make your show better by dismissing previous incarnations in previous shows and say, "Oh, I came up with this idea. They're the best. They're better than the Klingons, better than the Jem'Hadar, all that kind of stuff."
Right.
That
we do have
it's not necessary. It's not necessary. Oh, Bobby's back. He said, "The hat killed me."
Yeah. Like I said, very Panama Jack.
Well, I just don't see why we couldn't see him in uniform one last time, because I don't think we're ever going to see him in uniform again. I think what we got in episode 2, which is my least favorite episode, that's all we're going to get if Picard in the new uniform, in the new, which I thought was really cool looking. I actually liked the Admiral uniform that he had. So anyway, he's on the planet. We established this relationship with these warrior nuns, and the fact that apparently they have sort of adopted this Romulan orphan. We assume he's an orphan. They don't specifically state that, but obviously that's what it sounds like. And it's kind of a weird situation because it's an all-female group, but they're taking care of this boy. And it's under the premise that Picard is eventually going to get him resettled somewhere else. That's kind of the premise, that this is a temporary thing. Well, of course, what happens, right off the bat, Picard realizes that the shipyards have been destroyed. He needs to get back to work. He needs to leave. And apparently that's it. He never comes back, which I was like, why would Picard do that? Why wouldn't he at least come back to explain the situation, even if he wasn't in Starfleet? It's a weird thing that he just dropped everything and didn't come back and at least tell them what was going on. Apparently he never came back. That was the last time he saw this character that I have on the screen, the Romulan boy, which I can't remember his name.
Elnor. Isn't it Elnor? I think it's Elnor.
I get him confused with the Lord of the Rings character, so it's
not Elrond.
So I want to say Elron. I always want to say
yeah.
Elron because he looks exactly like Elron. So
I think
anyway,
it's Elnor.
we find out that apparently the relationship between the two was strong. This boy really liked Picard. Picard was teaching him about fencing and the Three Musketeers and things like that. And there was sort of a father-son relationship developing, but Picard just threw that all away when he decided to leave Starfleet. And he never came back to even check on these people or explain his actions or anything. So now we advance to the current time frame, and Picard has decided he needs to go back to this planet because he thinks those warrior nuns can help him, which makes sense. He needs some muscle. Supposedly, these warrior nuns are the best fighters in the universe. Again, that's from Kurtzman. So he's going over to them.
The Space League of Assassins? That's what you're telling me?
Space Assassins?
Oh, no, I haven't seen this yet.
Yes, Dr. Strange. They're sort of like the League of Assassins in space.
That's a good way to put it, right? Yeah, they're like the League of Assassins.
League of Assassins in space.
There you go. That's a good way to explain them. So,
but there's no Ra's al Ghul, there's no Merlin, but there are, I don't know what you want to call them, elves. There are elves. They're elves afoot.
They're elves, yeah, exactly.
Well, it already sounds to me like you already have a Wayne and a Robin. Picard and the boy.
That's true. It's a good observation.
That is a good observation. That is a good observation. So apparently, Picard goes to this planet wanting to enlist the help of these warrior nuns, get one of them to help him. But apparently, the way they operate is you have to basically tell them your quest. And they actually use the word quests, which was a little bit cringe to me because there's a lot of Lord of the Rings references going on here. And it's like, okay, guys, I get it. You know what I mean? So just stop, please. But he explains that he has to, the way that these nuns operate, you don't hire them with money or barter or anything. They basically, you have to tell them your story, and then they decide whether you're worthy of their assistance or not. So that's basically what's bringing Picard to this planet. That's what he's trying to do. So meanwhile, of course, we still have the Borg cube, which I don't think you touched on that at all, Dave, which is we have the what's going on the Borg cube. And we're kind of finding out, I guess, a little bit more about what the Super Tal Shiar mission is on the Borg cube.
Yes, so, the Super Tal Shiar.
Yeah, the Super Tal Shiar. I have to say, there were some really cringeworthy scenes on that Borg cube. The scene where they were doing the sock thing and running around the Borg cube, like, you know, these, I mean, that was bad. I mean, that was just bad, you know, where they're running around with, you know, using their socks to slide across the room, you know, to show how in love they are, I guess. I don't know what that scene was.
That whole scene was awful. I mean, they've got the dramatic music swells. We're supposed to care. Because at first he's talking about like a Borg initiation, and he's taking her into the ship, and I was like, what is he going to show her? And then when they do this, I'm like, okay, this is stupid. This is stupid.
Well, the second he said Borg initiation, I knew that, or ritual or whatever he said, I was like, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to be really stupid. They're either going to actually show the Borg doing something completely stupid that we never knew. But then what we got was, no, he's just fooling around with her and he does this stupid thing. And, you know, they're so in love. You know what I mean? I guess is what that scene was supposed to, even though they met, like yesterday? Of course, they're already sleeping together and all that stuff. So, you know, whatever, you know?
Yeah, so, it was bad. It was bad. I get it. You're trying to show us that they're falling in love or whatever, but I didn't buy it.
I didn't buy it at all. I didn't buy it at all. So anyway, the other thing that we find out is we do get
like I need to put them in here.
I'm sorry, say that again, Doctor?
So it sounds like I need to put them in here and admit them.
Yeah, yeah. They could probably use some psychiatric, some psychoanalysis at least, I'd say.
Well, that's kind of what's supposed to be going on, right? I mean, because they
Yeah.
have all these crazy Romulans that were apparently their assimilation was botched somehow, which we don't find out. We still don't know why. That's right now. That's what Soji's trying to do. Is he's trying to find out why these Romulans went insane when they were assimilated instead of actually got assimilated. Apparently, they're like in between, and so they were never properly assimilated into the Borg collective, and now they're all just crazy. Unlike the other Borg, where they're able to just take the Borg parts out and they're a person again. You know, like Q. Something's wrong with the Romulans, and these were the last people that were actually assimilated by this particular cube, because obviously this cube fell into Romulan hands. The last contact the Borg cube had when it was functioning was with the Romulan scout vessel, and that's where all these crazy Romulans. So she's trying to figure that out. But in the midst of all this, we get to see that the undercover operative, the sister of our Super Tal Shiar, and she's also a Super Tal Shiar or whatever. And man, that's some pretty cringe-worthy like incest stuff going on there, don't you think? With the two of them,
that's pretty weird.
It's very weird. You talk about psychoanalyzing that. Apparently, the two of them are like, it looks like they're lovers. You know, the brother and sister of the Super Tal Shiar. I don't know why that's in there. I don't know if that's going to become relevant later, but it's weird. Is
their last name Lannister?
That might be why they did that. I really think, because we're talking about Dune references, we're talking about Lord of the Ring references. I could buy that's basically just a ripoff from Game of Thrones, because they want to throw all this edgy stuff into it because incest is so hip now. You know what I mean? Because of Game of Thrones,
That's an interesting way to put that. Incest is hip now.
Oh, why is it there? I'm like,
I don't know.
Why is that there? Why even go there? In Star Trek, you know what I mean? Come on, that's not Trek. That's like Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? So
right.
So that stuff is really weird. I will say I am interested in this idea of what did happen to these Romulans. What did the assimilation go bad somehow? Was it deliberate, where they actually wanted to be assimilated? Maybe they were trying to put like a virus on the cube to disable it, but that went wrong too. You know what I mean? So I am curious about that particular story, but I'll be honest.
Can I throw this out there? Because we've talked about some of my crazy outlandish theories. This is what I thought this is what I thought they had an issue with Picard. I thought it was going to be revealed at some point that they still did manage to evacuate a large percentage of the Romulan people, but that the only person that Picard could go to that could help facilitate this was going to essentially be the Borg. There was going to be some kind of understanding, some kind of truce, some kind of agreement. And that was going to be why we had a Borg cube and the Romulans were on it. And there was some sort of like, I thought that's what I thought somehow that was going to be like a thing. So as we get further into Picard, and it turns out that he just quit and whatever happened.
Right.
I kept waiting for there to be some kind of reveal that the Romulans appealed to the Borg, and that's why they have this co-op station. Now, of course, I know that somehow they got possession of it and they're using it for whatever, scientific research, and they're selling off the parts of the Borgs and stuff. I mean, I get all that. They've shown us that, but I kept thinking somehow there was going to be a connection that because I thought that was going to better explain why the Borg was integrated into the show to the level that they are. That somehow they had something to do with the evacuation. Because if we want to recast characters in a different light, I don't know. It's a crazy theory.
What I thought, honestly, was just that this is the aftermath of what Janeway did to the collective, and that the cubes are all disabled. That's what I thought. That's not true, by the way. I think Shaban actually said, no, there are still Borg that are Borg and running around assimilating people. Just this particular cube is disabled, and we'll find out why later. We have a comment from the chat going back to our discussion of the Super Tal Shiar, which Katie is correcting me because it's the Zot Vash. All right,
there you go.
That's the Super Tal Shiar. So she says maybe the Zot Vash consider themselves to be brothers and sisters, quote unquote. In other words, they're brothers and sisters in the Zot Vash. That's possible. I mean, I would hope so. You know what I mean? If that's the case, I'm okay with that. If that's the case, that they just all call each other brothers and sisters because they take some sort of oath, the way that you do in the military, the way they do in a police department, they'll say brothers and sisters and stuff like that. In that context, I'm okay with it. That's not what we're being presented with, Katie. I just want to put that out there, that's not how it's being framed. It's being framed very creepy that this is not okay. That's actually the way it's being framed. But she also goes on to say, if not, it reminded me of the Bor. I'm going to butcher this. The Borgias. The Borgias. There we go. So we've got someone educated in the panel today. So
yes, thank you.
and I'm going to butcher those two names too. Is it Lucretia and Caesari? Those two characters, which I do know a little bit about that. I mean, obviously, when it comes to royals and things like that, there is a lot of history of incest and things like that, and that's what Game of Thrones was going off of. Game of Thrones was incorporating that whole royals do this. Romans did it. You know what I mean? They keep the bloodlines pure, but this context, it just seems weird. I hope Katie's theory is correct, and they just everybody calls each other brother and sister, but that's not the way this is being framed. I just want to point that out too.
Interesting.
I want to thank so as well.
So I want to thank the people who participated in the chat. Are we good with Picard now? Because I don't know if I want to throw a promo thing in Picard, the Picard clip.
Well, I do have more to say about Picard.
Okay, go right ahead.
Because we have to get into it ends on a high note. So the episode actually ends on a good note. So
it was great to see Seven finally.
Yeah, we got to see Seven. But leading up to that was pretty interesting, I thought. So what we're presented with is apparently there are some sort of pirates that exist in this quadrant of space. It's not part of the Federation. It doesn't sound like. It's like it could be in the neutral zone. I would think there wouldn't really be a neutral zone anymore because the Romulan Empire is kind of falling apart. So we don't know exactly where this place is, where Picard is going to get the assistance of the nuns. And so what ends up happening, of course, is instead of getting one of the nuns to help him, he gets the boy to help him because the boy doesn't belong there anyway, but they've trained him, which is kind of cool. Right. So even though traditionally these are all women, these are women warriors, this is like the one exception. The little boy is now one of them, essentially, but not because he can never be one of them because he's a male. And I do get that. That I thought was kind of cool. It put him like in this kind of interesting situation where he's almost tailor-made to help Picard, And so,
depending upon how they want to frame his story, it gives us an interesting way to explore the idea of identity and how much your identity is sort of wrapped up, quote unquote, in your gender. So there is some interesting ideas to explore there.
No, I liked it. Sure. I thought it was. I thought there were some interesting ideas there because, again, even though he essentially is one of them, he's good enough to be one of them, but he can't be one of them because he's a guy. So I thought was interesting. Yep. You know what I mean? He just can't. He'll never be accepted by them because he's a guy. So Picard tells him his situation, what's been going on, and at first he's still angry at Picard. The reason that this episode is called Absolute Candor is because this particular order they are the opposite of Romulans, because Romulans are all about secrets and deception, and these particular Romulans always tell you what's on the forefront of their mind. They just spit it out. So they have absolute candor. They don't have a filter. They don't filter what they say, which is also kind of neat. It's kind of shows why these particular Romulans wouldn't get along with the other Romulans. They don't act like anybody else in Romulan society, because Romulan society is all based on secrets and lies. That's what Romulan society is. That's why we have the Tal Shiar and the Super Tal Shiar, otherwise known as the Zat Vash. Okay, so that's the basis, the cornerstone of their society. So it is kind of neat to see that. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have people that are different. You know, we've seen that they have people that are different. We had the people that were the part of for unification, Spock's people, Spock's movement. We know there's dissidents in Romulan society. So I like that. I thought that was kind of cool. And then eventually, what happens is, even though at first the male character doesn't want to help Picard, what ends up happening is Picard goes and picks a fight, which I thought was kind of weird. So
I did think that was a little strange when he walked over and he threw the sign down, and
because apparently what's happening
that's
is
very, because he part of the tenor of the show is the reason he left Starfleet is because Starfleet was no longer Starfleet.
Right.
Well, going over there and throwing that sign down and walking in somewhere he's obviously not welcome, that's not very prime directive. I mean, now he's not interfering with their society in a major way, but that kind of goes against the tenets of what Starfleet believed. Like, I mean, I understand it's not socially acceptable to discriminate against people, you know, but I just thought that was, to me, it seems slightly out of character for Picard.
It's not Trek. That's the problem. It's a construct that works in our world, and we understand it in the context of our world, and that essentially this is Jim Crow. I mean, this is segregation that's going on this Romulan planet because they feel abandoned. I mean, that's really what comes out of it too, is because they feel that the Federation betrayed them, and it sounds like they have good reason to think that. Okay, so they don't want to interact with humans. They don't want to interact with other worlds. There was a mention that there's sort of like this movement going on that particular colony, and I can't remember what they called it. It was like the New Romulan Movement or something like that. I can't remember what the term was, but they threw that out there that apparently there are Romulan survivors who are starting to like feel like, hey, we need to just stay away from other races now and be isolationists and all that kind of stuff. So it's going both ways, interestingly enough. So you got the Federation's becoming quote unquote more isolationist, and apparently some of the Romulans feel exactly the same way. They don't want anything to do with off-worlders or non-Romulans either. So Picard, of course, doesn't like this. So he goes into this tavern that clearly says Romulans only, takes the sign down, and sits down as if that's going to be okay and nobody's going to make an issue of it. And of course, what ends up happening is they decide that they're going to challenge him to a fight and basically kill him because he's an old man. But Picard refuses to fight. So Picard refuses to fight, and what happens is the Romulan, again, I cannot stop thinking of the Lord of the Rings elf character, and I keep screwing his name up. It's Elnor, right? Elnor.
We've got another comment from Katie. Yeah, I think it's Elnor. But there you go. Romulan
Good catch,
rebirth.
Katie. Yeah, the
Thank you,
Romulan
Katie.
rebirth movement. That's what it was. Katie's got it. The Romulan rebirth movement, which I thought was interesting. I do think that's kind of interesting and makes sense that the Romulans would feel that way because they feel abandoned and they don't really want anything to do with the Federation or other aliens in general. They just don't want anything to do with them. I get that. That makes sense to me. But Picard kind of picking this fight, it's too contemporary. It's not really Trek. It's something maybe we would do. You know what I mean? As a contemporary American or whatever. But it's not something that really makes a whole lot of sense in the context of Trek. And he should know he's going to cause trouble. And then he's not willing to face the consequence of that. He's like, no, I'm not going to fight you. You know what I mean? Well, you picked a fight, Picard. You know, what did you expect was going to happen? So he refuses to fight, but the other character comes in.
It's Elnor. It is Elnor.
Elnor. Okay. Elnor comes in and he rescues Picard and kills everybody. Kills the guy that was going to fight Picard. Chops his head off.
Cuts his head right off.
And so now we know he's a badass. Okay, we obviously know he's a badass. I do think it's weird that he runs around with a sword. They kind of even joke with that in the show, because did you notice that the one guy's like, okay, yeah, screw this. I'm just let's see you dodge disruptor fire, and then they beamed him out. It was almost like the Indiana Jones moment. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing that's interesting, yet kind of slightly odd. I found about all that. Okay, they're doing a lot of stuff with Alexander Dumas, Three Musketeers. Okay. And it reminded me of Musketeers in an extent, like the way some of the Romulans were kind of outfitted, like they had pistols and swords. Like you could have seen a Musketeer, of course, having a saber or something, and having I forget what the second blade. Our expert might know more about this than me at this current stage of my life. I know more about the Japanese versions, but having a long sword, having a smaller sword for parrying, and then maybe having a flintlock pistol, right?
Right, Musketeers.
And I kept seeing that, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. But at the same point, too, I thought it was weird. We've never seen Romulans running around with swords before.
No,
we haven't had swords being an important part of Romulan culture. That's a Klingon thing, with the what is it? I forget what the double bladed, the sword of Kalis and all that. That to me,
the batleth, the Klingon
the batleth. It just, I thought it was. We've never seen that associated. Now, we haven't spent a lot of time exploring Romulan culture, and the history. Maybe that's always been there. But I just personally, I just thought it was weird because it just felt like a Klingon thing. It's like all of a sudden we're taking a Klingon thing and we're going to give it to the Romulans. So
but they did play around with it because I thought it was funny because at the end of that sequence, one of the other guys is like, well, screw this sword stuff. I'm just going to shoot you. And then they get beamed up. It was almost going to be an Indiana Jones moment, with the swordsmith, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, screw this. I'm just going to shoot him, which is why we don't use swords anymore, even now. And we're nowhere near Star Trek. You know what I mean? Swords are not an effective weapon, folks, in terms of actual, combat in this time period, if your opponent has a gun. So, that they're just not. They're also too conspicuous.
I know a few who disagree.
Well, if your opponent has a gun, they're not effective because they're too conspicuous. And anybody with a gun is just going to shoot you. Okay. A knife, it makes a little bit more sense because you can conceal a knife. You can get close to somebody without them knowing that you have a knife, and they're still effective weapons. But in terms of actual real life combat, we haven't used swords in combat for a long time, a very long time. And it just seems odd to me that that's what they use. This order hasn't apparently adapted to the technology of the times because he doesn't carry a disruptor, which I thought is really weird. You'd think he'd at least have a disruptor, even if he is into the sword thing,
Dr. Strange, on the streets of Gotham, have you noticed that swords are used almost equally with firearms, or is the firearm the primary weapon in Gotham?
Firearms definitely the primary weapon in Gotham. If a person walks out with a sword, they better know how to use it. Or they're going to be dropped really fast. Slade? I mean, it's Slade. Come on.
You're talking about the Deathstroke the Terminator, for maybe our viewers who are not terribly familiar with a lot of the personalities you have running around in Gotham. Are you referring to Deathstroke, Dr. Strange?
Yes, I'm referring to Deathstroke the Terminator.
Ah, cool. Thank you, sir.
But then again, he does have superhuman reflexes, so guns really are not effective against him. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's a little different in Picard. As far as all that goes. In fact, even Raffi makes fun of him. Good. Remember, Raffi makes fun of him and says, "Oh, you brought a boy with a stick." She said that you brought a boy with a stick.
I'm trying to tune Raffi out, though. I'm just trying to tune Raffi out. Whenever Raffi's talking, I'm looking at my phone. I really don't like that character. I really don't. I hope she grows on me.
She's pretty nasty, honestly. She's pretty mean to pretty much everybody, So. Other than Rios, apparently she has a relationship with Rios, but she said something, messed up about the scientist lady. First thing she says to Raffi is something insulting. That's apparently she meets someone and she just insults them. That's apparently what future humans do now. That's not very.
Well, that's what her character does.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't like her character.
So now this does get us
to from Gotham.
No, we don't know that. She could be from Gotham.
That's true.
She could be.
True.
We don't know. She could
would
be from
explain a
Gotham.
lot. The attitude,
It would explain a
drug
lot.
use problem, the violence. It would explain
In fact,
a lot.
it would
Violent
make it might turn out that she spent some time in Arkham Asylum. We're going to find that out later. That is possible. They haven't said no. It's possible we're going to find out that she actually did spend some time in in Arkham Asylum. We do have a comment. So Raffi is one note and it's getting old. And you are right, Bobby. I agree with you 100%. She is one note and it's getting old. She insults everybody. And it's like this, again, it's like, this isn't your dad's Trek. You know what I mean? This isn't your dad's Trek. That's kind of what the response I think is. It's like, yeah, well, okay. Obviously it's not. I get that.
We all got the message. Thank you very much.
I got it loud and clear. Loud and clear, that this is not my dad's Trek, which is really sad because my dad introduced me to Trek, but whatever, But we do get on the ship. We get back on the ship and we have an attack in space. We have a space battle. We actually have a space battle.
My favorite scene in this episode. I really enjoyed this whole thing with Rios. And he's got another hologram he called up. It's like his whole crew is hologram versions of himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And and he's very just sort of like leaning on the console and just unamused. And Rios is my favorite character. I like that whole bit. That was a lot of fun. And where they're flying around and you see the inertia on the ship, I loved all that. That was a lot of fun. And go ahead.
Did you watch The Ready Room? Because he was the actor featured on The Ready Room.
No, I didn't. I after the last one, I was just like, I don't know if I want to watch this.
Well, you like Rios, so you're going to like that episode because that's what the episode's about.
I'll check it out.
And he talks about that whole aspect, which I do kind of find fascinating. This idea, because at first you think he doesn't have a crew. It's just him.
Right.
It's like, no, he has a crew. They're just all holograms of himself and different versions of himself. Yeah. So he has a crew. They're just all holograms. So I think that's kind of a neat idea. I like it. I know he loves it because he talked about in the interview that he gets to play all these different versions of himself, different versions of this character, different accents, different looks. Yeah. So as an actor, he's gonna love it,
I love that whole thing they're doing with him and the holograms on the ship. That stuff, to me, that stuff's a winner. I loved every minute of all that. I like even the previous episode, we had the one who he's like the holodeck concierge type character. Like all that stuff is really fun for me. I've enjoyed everything with him. So,
I know this reference, Bobby. Yeah. Reminds me of Herman's Head. It does remind me a little bit of Herman's Head.
Yeah,
it actually does.
It's cool.
It's me more of Booster Gold.
Booster Gold.
Oh, okay.
But I like that aspect. I think it's interesting. The only thing I don't like is that he's a little like dismissive and kind of rude to the holograms, which again is not very Trek. But it is what it is. It's still fun. I know it's got to be fun for him. So it's got to be a dream job for him because he gets to play so many different characters on the show. Essentially, it's so that's neat, and it makes sense. It does make sense, in Star Trek that people would do that. That they would have ships, and instead of having to deal with an alien or human crew, that they would just make a bunch of holograms. Why not? They can do that. We've seen that before. That holograms can do these kinds of things. So that's kind of cool. I did like that, and the entire sequence, as far as the space combat, was pretty cool. Obviously, we have the Picard ship. They're fighting with this Romulan ship that apparently has been taken over by pirates, and a mysterious ship appears to help them. And earlier in the episode, early in the episode, Picard had specifically stated that this planet was supposed to be under the protection of the Fenris Rangers. But apparently they pulled out. But apparently they didn't all pull out. So this ship appears. We don't know who's in it at first. The ship assists them, but in doing so, that ship is destroyed. So they beam the pilot aboard, and it is 7 of 9, which is obviously the high point of the episode. Fans are totally excited about this. That Seven's finally on the show. She's on the ship. Which is kind of cool. We know from other information that she is one of the Fenris Rangers. So I'm guessing she was responding to this battle, that kind of a thing. We'll find out later. That's one thing. We don't really find out anything about Seven other than she was in this ship and apparently decided to assist Picard's ship against these known pirates.
Right.
So it's cool to have her back. I know this is something that fans have been waiting for. It took us 4 episodes to get there, and we only get a little snippet, but at least she's on board, and that's definitely a high note of this episode. It ends on a high note.
Yeah, that was that whole ending sequence. I enjoyed all of it, and it was a lot of fun to see Seven. And I hope that she's going to be like part of the crew for a little while at least. I mean, I'd love for her to be a regular.
My biggest concern about the legacy characters is they're just cameos, and we kind of have already seen that with Brent Spiner. Data's relevant. I mean, he is relevant to the story, but I don't think we're going to see any more Data. I think that's it. And I really wanted him to be more involved. And
I did too.
I don't want the legacy characters to just be glorified cameos, So I hope she's part of the crew now. That's my hope, is she's part of the crew, and she's going to be with them going forward for the next 6 episodes. We only have 6 episodes left. That's it.
Yep.
We're almost halfway through this already.
Reminds me of Crisis. It was full of legacy cameos.
Yes, that's true.
All they did was just put people in there to die.
Yeah,
that's true.
Exactly. So I don't want that. I don't want to see Seven die in the next episode, in the first scene. Okay, if they do something like that, they're gonna alienate a ton of the fan base. So
there's a lot of people tuning in for Seven. So
absolutely.
I hope they have enough sense not to do something that's stupid.
So I mean, Twitter was going insane.
Yeah.
Twitter was going insane with people reacting to Seven finally being on the show. Because it took a while. End of the 4th episode. We only see her for like 5 seconds. So hopefully they do her character justice, and she'll do some cool things and contribute to the next episode. We know what's the next episode. Apparently, we're going to another planet to find Maddox. So we'll see. Apparently, we may find Maddox in episode 5. That's the next mission. That's what they're all going to be doing now. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, it'd be interesting. I actually, it's not your dad's Trek. I actually rewatched some original series episodes, and I actually watched a couple of Next Gen episodes. I had them on while I was doing different things, and one of the episodes I rewatched was Brothers, because I'm really hoping that your theory that somehow lore is behind all this. Like, it'd be really interesting if they think they're going to go find Bruce Maddox, and Bruce Maddox isn't who they find.
Yeah.
That would be kind of fun, and that would be definitely a different, interesting way to incorporate Brent Spiner in the show a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting. I think Spiner would like to do it too, because I think he liked playing lore a lot. And it would be kind of interesting too, as I thought about this. I'm not saying this is my theory. I'm just saying it would be cool if they did this, because these synths are actually biological except for the positronic brain. It would be kind of neat if Lore had done that, and so now he's aged, and then you don't even have to worry about that. You know what I mean? Because now he's a biological with he just has the positronic brain.
Yeah,
that would be kind of neat. And then you could even get rid of the makeup if you wanted. You know what I mean? It could just be like, no, this is how I look now. You know what I mean? Because I'm a biological now. You know what I mean? So, but I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, I think it would be so cool if they did, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
From all the discussions earlier, it sounds like if anything's going to be cool, it's not going to
happen. That's one way to look at it. It's the way to look at it, Doctor.
That's kind of the way it's been so far. Again, I'm hoping 7 is kick-ass and fun, and we'll see how her story plays out. So that's definitely what a lot of fans are hoping for. So we'll see.
Yeah. Is that good for Picard?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to move on to our next segment. But before we do that, I want to just real quickly, we kind of started, we changed the format up a little bit in this episode, but I remind everyone, I want to thank everyone who's participating in the comments and, the ongoing chat that we have going on in the comments. We are continuing our art drawing. Everyone who comments is entered into a drawing to win an original sketch card. The one for this episode is themed according to our main topic, which we'll be covering a little bit later. It's the topic that Dr. Hugo Strange is here primarily to discuss, and that, of course, is the Joker. So everyone who comments on this episode, this is an original Batman the Legend sketch card done by me. This is a Cryptozoic. This is an official, and you can tell by the little hollow foil thing there on the corner. But this is a 1 of 1, and this is of the Joker, which will be the main topic of today's episode. Thanks to everyone who's commented. The contest also for the original art in conjunction with our survey is officially ended at this point. Also, too, I want to mention the card for the comments is USA shipping only, just because it makes my life a little bit easier. There we go. So just USA only, and you need to be at least over the age of 18. But enough about that. But the other contest that we had going, I'll reach over here and grab it real quick. For the survey to win this, I want to thank everyone who participated in our survey. I'm going to be compiling them and putting them all together, and I'll be doing a drawing probably a little bit later this week, and we will announce the winner on next week's show. I want to thank everyone who participated. We're going to use that information to help hopefully create a better show. And as you notice, by us changing up the format, we're always looking at new ways to improve what we're doing here on Retro Rogues Live. So that's enough housekeeping. For now, I will remind everyone about the sketch card contest for commenting during the show as we move on, because I want to continue to encourage people who might be watching. Please join into the comment. Be part of the conversation about what we're talking about. That's what makes the show fun and entertaining for everyone. So we're going to move on to pop culture news. I don't have a lot for pop culture news this week. We do have some important stories that we need to talk about. Eric, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first if you want.
Okay, cool. Let me pull this up on my screen here real quick. Wow. So many little pop-ups. Pop-ups.
Yeah, I know.
Websites are just getting kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is coming from Deadline. We do have one more. I know everyone's like going, well, wait a minute, David, are you not going to talk about that other thing? I know everyone wants to hear my reaction. We're going to get to that here in just a minute. This is going to be my main one, though, for this episode. This comes from Deadline. Some people may or may not be aware of, but Kevin Smith is working on a sort of animated He-Man Master Universe show for Netflix. It is going to be, it's called Revelation, and I think it's somehow supposed to tie into the original one, the original Filmation one. I'm not quite clear on that yet. I haven't been following it too closely, but they did actually announce the voice cast. So this is a brand new. Kevin Smith is serving as executive producer. He's probably obviously writing on it as well, probably directing several episodes. Masters Universe, Revelation, Netflix anime series, or actually animated series. And they've announced some of the cast. As you can see here, Mark Hamill, Lena Headey, Chris Wood, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and among others. We're going to scroll down and see if we can find. This is the full list. I'm going to run through this list pretty quick, because those of you that are genre fans are going to find this interesting. So Mark Hamill's going to be Skeletor, everybody. If you hadn't heard that yet, yeah,
I didn't know
Mark
that.
Hamill's gonna,
I did not know that. That's cool.
Lena Headey, which they say Game of Thrones. I primarily think of her from 300. Of course, she was also in the Sarah Connor Chronicles as Sarah Connor. It's going to be Evelyn. Chris Wood
really?
is going to. Yep.
That's going to be just like Cersei from Game of Thrones. Very similar characters in a lot of ways, and attitude and all that stuff.
Chris Wood will be playing
for business.
Yeah. Chris Wood will be Prince Adam, He-Man. Sarah Michelle Gellar is going to be Teela.
Really?
Liam Cunningham is going to do Man at Arms. Stephen Root is going to be Cringer. One of my favorite voice actors, Diedrich Bader. Some people may know Diedrich Bader was actually Batman and one of the later animated shows, which I quite enjoyed, Brave and the Bold. I have an interesting story about Diedrich Bader, but I don't want to take up too much time with that. But Diedrich Bader is going to be King Randor and Trapjaw. Griffith Newman is going to be Orko. Tiffany Smith is going to be Andra. Henry Rollins, of all people, is going to be Triclops.
Oh, wow.
Alan Oppenheimer, the original Skeletor, is going to be Mossman. Susan Eisenberg, who is the voice of Wonder Woman on the Justice League, is going to be the Sorceress. Alicia Silverstone is going to be Queen Marlena.
Alicia Silverstone's back?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Justin Long will be Roboto. Jason Mewes will be Stinkor. Phil Lamar will be Hero, which those of you who are really familiar with Masters, you know who that is. Tony Todd, Candyman himself, is going to be Scareglow. Cree Summer is going to be playing the Priestess. Kevin Michael Richardson, for the purposes of this show, who's actually one of the voice actors who did the Joker, is going to be Beastman. And one of the big ones, Kevin Conroy, that's right, Batman from Batman the Animated Series, is going to be Merman. So that'll be interesting. So Merman fans, you leveled up. You got Kevin Conroy. And Harley Quinn Smith, which is Kevin Smith's daughter, will actually be playing Ilena. So there's your main cast for He-Man Revelation. I feel like the voice cast in itself is a revelation. I'm very excited for this. I am a Kevin Smith fan. I don't know if they have the art here in the Deadline article, but I saw it kind of bouncing about. I don't see it. The preview art they released for it is pretty striking. So and really beautiful. It's just a shot of Castle Grayskull, but it's really well done. So I'm very excited for this. So tell me, Eric, how do you feel about this Masters Universe show coming to Netflix?
Wow, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I didn't know a lot about it. I think the only coverage I watched was some Midnight's Edge video a while back, where they were talking about some of the issues bringing this show on the air in the first place. Because I believe Sony owns the rights right now, and there's been some backstage kind of antics. So this cast blows me away. This is a combination of some of the greatest from film, TV, and voice actors. You know what I mean? And I love that. That's amazing that they got this quality of a cast and such a because these are people that are kind of known for different things, and you got some of the greatest from film, TV, and voice acting. I dig it. I really dig it. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. I wasn't expecting the cast to be. This is just an all-star assemblage of talent. It really is. I'm very, very excited. So tell us, Dr. Strange, are you familiar with Masters of the Universe at all?
Not particularly, but I have heard roomings. Jesus Christ. I've heard rumors of the so-called He-Man from a crossover of sorts. Some kind of alternate universe. However, hearing upon the cast, I definitely can't show this in Arkham because some might have flashbacks of Batman or Joker.
That would make sense. That would make sense. Very cool. All right. So that's going to be. This will be my main one. We're gonna touch hopefully on my other main one I wanted to get to hopefully here a little later. So tell me, Eric, what do you have for pop culture news this episode?
I got, I think, 2 articles, and these are going to be pretty quick, and they're kind of fun and funny. Anyway, this is this is the comments from Harrison Ford. I don't know if you heard about this. I got a big kick out of this. So the title of this article starts out with a quote from Harrison Ford. Okay, somebody of course had to be that guy and be a complete nerd. And listen, Harrison Ford's not a nerd. Okay, he's not a nerd. He's not a geek. He's a straight-laced guy. Okay, yeah. Pretty much everybody knows that. But some geeky reporter had to ask him because they're idiots and they don't do any research and they think Harrison Ford's in Star Wars, so he loves Star Wars, right? No, he doesn't. Okay. Right. So they asked him basically if Harrison Ford appearing in Rise of Skywalker, if that was a Force ghost. Stupidest question to ask Harrison Ford. This is so Harrison Ford. His answer was, I have no fucking idea what a Force ghost is. So because he doesn't. He's not a fan, guys. And people have to understand this. Just because somebody is an actor in a beloved franchise, okay, doesn't mean they're into it. They're into the paycheck. They're into the acting, you know, they're into the performance. They're into it's a job. It's a job to them. And I think people sometimes forget this, you know, and they obviously this reporter did, you know, because it's like, you know, Harrison Ford doesn't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? You know, I've seen him on tons of interviews. You want to ask him something about behind the scenes, which actually this article does talk a little bit about that, about the process of getting him involved with Rise of Skywalker, because Harrison Ford was like, hey, I'm dead. I mean, he was even kind of like, why are you asking me back? I'm dead. Because he doesn't really even get the Force Ghost thing. And of course, I would say, by the way, he was not a Force Ghost. He obviously was not a Force Ghost. He was a projection that Leia was doing to reach out to Ben, and it killed her. You know what I mean? That's what that was. Yeah. And she was using the image of Han Solo to reach out to him, to her son Ben. So the dumb question, but I just love Harrison Ford's response and the fact that, you know, do you guys do any research, these reporters and stuff like that? Because you know he doesn't know and he doesn't care. He just doesn't. He's not into Star Wars. Again, people need to understand that a lot of these actors are not fans. They're not. They're just not. They're fans of the paycheck. They're fans of having work. They like to work. Harrison Ford's working all the time. He's got a new movie coming out. That's why this question was asked, because he's doing press for the new movie he's about to come out with. I think it's called Call of the Wild. Call of the Wild is the one that's coming out. So he's doing the press tour, you know. But some nerd had to go and ask him this, you know, and I just think it's such a cool response by Harrison Ford, you know. It's like, I don't care. Right. I don't care, you know. So
yeah, I'm not surprised at his response. That totally fits. You know, and Harrison Ford's like he's like a dude. He's not just like he like builds stuff. He's a helicopter pilot. He's a
pilot, you know what I mean? He's into like other stuff. He has a life, you know what I mean? So
yeah. Just saying. So yeah, I'm not surprised at that response at all. So do you have do you have another story for pop culture?
Yes. This one's pretty quick. I just thought it was kind of funny in the context of you and I being such big Trekkies. And I don't know if you saw this, because it wasn't widely reported. This is who's this article from? This is actually from Space Force. This is actually from spaceforce.mil.
Wow.
And Space Force has named their first senior enlisted advisor. And I put this out on Twitter and I said, hey, do you see any resemblance to Miles O'Brien, maybe? You know what I mean? Of course, the response I got was, he looks a lot more like Picard to me. But we have the beloved chief of Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek: The Next Generation, Miles O'Brien. This gentleman here, this is Chief Master Sergeant Roger A. Toberman. I got that right. And it is appropriate for people that don't know, that's the highest enlisted rank in the Air Force, and it is customary to call them Chief. So this is the first real Miles O'Brien. This is the Senior Enlisted Advisor to Space Force.
Very interesting. You know, it was funny because we made the comment that, you know, judging with how, Starfleet's being portrayed, if I was to join anything right now, Space Force sounds like it might be more fun.
But from a fan perspective, I think it's kind of funny that, you know, there was all the comments and we talked about it, like the Space Force logo looking like Starfleet, but Space Force itself actually doesn't look like it's going to look like Starfleet. It looks like Stargate. If you understand the reference, because in Stargate, it's Air Force officers, you know what I mean, running around on spaceships. Yeah. And that's what's the real Space Force looks like it's going to be, even though obviously they're inspired by Starfleet with the logo, and there's going to be all sorts of, that stuff's not going to stop. There's always been that relationship with the military and with NASA, with Star Trek, because a lot of these people are fans. They are fans, a lot of these people in the military. But the funny thing is, to me, as from that fan perspective, is the real Starfleet might look more like Stargate than Star Trek in real life.
So even more reason for the MGM to figure out what they're doing with Stargate again.
Yeah, they get some good press right now. They get some really good press right now, I bet. And I bet the Air Force would be or Space Force would be all for it. You know what I mean? And be like, hey, yeah, let's get some Space Force stuff in there because we can get some good press on this, you know? So
that's an interesting partnership there in terms of like a sponsor. Would actually be Space Force. You know, Space Force as well as other branches of the military. That would be an interesting partner, you know, like because a lot of times they need, you know, advertising or sponsorship partner, you know, to work with. That would be a really interesting one to actually have the U.S. military, the Space Force, kind of play a role. Anyhow, I don't know, that's my marketing brain going.
That's to work actually, I think that's actually would be really smart.
Good matchup.
That would be an awesome matchup if they got a new Stargate out and Space Force was heavily involved in sponsoring it, you know, and all that stuff. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
that would be really cool.
So tell us, Dr. Strange, do you know much about the Space Force?
I know I don't even know anything about it, to be honest. I haven't been paying much attention. I just know it exists, and I thought it was a joke.
Oh,
no, it exists.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Do they have lasers? Do they have spaceships?
They have a space shuttle. I know that. The Air Force has been operating a space. They're the only people operating a space shuttle right now, as far as I know. It's not manned. It's a unmanned shuttle, but I know they have that. They have at least 2 of them, if not more. It's very secretive, actually. So, but they do have that.
Oh, okay. Sounds more like Checkmate and such.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
may there not be a Brainiac in your world.
Oh, yeah. So let's. I have it pulled up. If you'll share my screen. So this will be my last pop culture news item. We have to talk about this. So I'm going to let it run with the volume off. I think most people have probably seen this by now. This is the Robert Pattinson tease for the Batman. This is the Matt Reeves film. It actually has some musical score in it by Michael Giacchino. I'm going to pause it here for just a second. I want to acknowledge this. I don't want to dwell on it too much because we have a lot to get to in this episode still to come here. So there's a lot of interesting theories going around that the bat symbol on Robert Pattinson's bat suit might actually be composed of pieces of the gun that was used to actually murder his parents. Have you guys heard any of that?
No, I didn't hear that at all. Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Actually, before even hearing about that, that's what I thought. I mean, think about it. I mean, he's going to want to showcase. I mean, that's what made Batman was the murder of his parents, and he wants to strike fear into the criminals. In kind of a way, him having that on his chest, showing that he overcame his own fear to strike fear into everyone else.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. We'll have to see, obviously, as the movie unfolds, how that actually plays out. But I thought it was an interesting theory that would be worth bringing up.
Wow.
Now, along the same lines too, it could just be some sort of an interesting batarang apparatus that's built into the suit as well, or it could just be ornamentation. But I thought it was an interesting fan theory that people are speculating that this bat symbol might actually be the actual gun that was used to kill his parents.
Wow.
Something else that you, as we're going to let this run, something else you can't really hear, and I do recommend it if you haven't seen this clip. Go out on YouTube, do a search for the Batman. Just start typing Robert, and it'll automatically come up, and then you can watch it. Speaking of batarangs, so tell us, Dr. Strange, do you have that because of your work with the Batman? Like, was that part of like something that the Gotham City Police Department that they turned in as you're working with his, some of his arch enemies and trying to rehabilitate them? Do you use that in treatment?
Sure, let's say that.
Okay. All right, so we're going to let this continue to run here. But the Michael Giacchino score they have going with this, it's actually really interesting, and it reemphasizes the idea that's been coming out that this is going to be very much a mystery story, that this will be a detective story for Batman, which I thought was really interesting. And it's interesting, too, that this suit is very heavily inspired by the Arkham video games, and not the Lee Barrimo, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, suit from Noel that a lot of people were putting forth as a fan theory. There's a lot of people saying that, oh, that's what the suit's going to look like, and they were just going on and on and on about it. And it turns out, no, it's much more influenced by the outfit, the version of the costume that he wears actually in Arkham.
And now you're going to get a lot of people hating the Batman movie because this is what they thought it was going to be, and it's not going to be what they thought it was going to be. Kind of like Star Wars.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that up, talk about just briefly. So tell me, Eric, how do you feel about the reveal of the new bat suit from the Batman?
Well, I thought it was interesting. I did see this when it was like trending on Twitter and everything like that. So I saw it pretty much when it came out. So I think I was actually working on some of our videos and things on YouTube. And as I do, I have Twitter in the background, and I think I actually got to see the video almost as it came out. And it's interesting to see people's reactions to it. Like I don't really have a big reaction to it right now because it's like a tease of a tease. You know what I mean? Where it's so little. It's cool. I think it's cool that Matt Reeves posted that. I think that's awesome. But It doesn't show a whole lot. A lot of people that were kind of dismissive of it were saying, "Hey, so are we getting like a new season of Daredevil? Is that what this is? Because it does kind of remind you of the Daredevil look from the Netflix series, with the red and all that stuff."
Yeah, it's just the red.
So, and we don't get to actually see his what the ears look like yet, which is always, to me, actually that's one of the things I nitpick the most. Is sometimes I'm like, the ears are not right, you know what I mean? So we'll see how the whole thing looks. I want to see that big, nice, professionally done picture, that I can just stare at and analyze and all that kind of stuff. So I know what his belt looks like,
Well, I can't say when I played that in the movie room at Arkham Asylum, all the patients screamed. So he does look like Batman.
There you go. That's a pretty big endorsement right there. That's a
there
pretty
you
big
go.
endorsement right there.
The patients at Arkham screamed, and it's eliciting the correct response.
Correct.
At least
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as Batman's concerned. So
absolutely
interesting. So, do we have anything else for pop culture? Or are we ready to move on to streaming wars?
No, I think we're good to go to streaming wars.
Okay, cool. All right. So in this segment, we talk about obviously the streaming wars, various things that are going on, in the world of like Disney Plus or Netflix. In a weird way, the He-Man announcement, Master Universe announcement I made earlier in the pop culture news segment actually kind of plays into the streaming wars. That's another salvo for people that are into genre entertainment and geek culture that obviously benefits Netflix. Having Kevin Smith and that incredible cast, that's a big pull. That's a big lure for those of us who grew up with Master Universe, such as myself, to continue my subscription. Because as everyone knows, I bring up every episode, I'm always looking for any reason in the world to cancel Netflix. However, I never do it because they always have something interesting going on there. So good job, Netflix. You still have my money, and now you've got my curiosity with the Masters Universe Revelation. So tell me, Eric, do you have anything interesting for this episode's installment of the Streaming Wars?
I do. I have two articles, and I'm going to start here because we've talked about this before. This is a Verge article, and it's talking about YouTube's role in the streaming wars, which you don't get a lot of coverage of YouTube's role in the streaming wars because everyone's focused on Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Peacock, and so a lot of times YouTube ends up being kind of like under the radar. But to me, YouTube is very important, and they are a big front on in the streaming wars. And this Verge article, which is a little bit older, this is dated February 13th. It says YouTube is the front runner in the mobile streaming wars, and it's not even close. It's not even close. It says here's a fun number to think about in 2019. YouTube dominated 70% of the total time people spent on their phones watching the top 5 entertainment apps. It's also the only one of those apps measured among Android phones, which dominate 75% of phone usage worldwide, that isn't specific to China, an area where Google doesn't even operate. The data from App Annie's latest report shows just how far ahead YouTube is on the mobile front, where more people are spending their time, especially teenagers and young adults. It's something that companies like Netflix, Warner Media, NBC Universal, and Disney will have to take into account as they compete not only for the best content, but for people's attention. And I think that's pretty striking, the number, how YouTube is dominating when it comes to watching something on your phone. Because like they said, a lot of younger people, that's how they watch their media. They watch on their phone, which I don't understand because I like to watch it on my TV. I use my PlayStation 4 for most of my streaming, even YouTube a lot. The only thing I don't like on using my PlayStation 4 for streaming or streaming like YouTube is because you can't comment with the PlayStation 4 app. So I have to break out my computer or my phone if I want to make comments on YouTube videos. But it's interesting to me that YouTube is such a dominant player, and you just have to remember that YouTube is mostly creator-owned content. It's content from the masses, and the fact that they have such an edge over these other services that are spending billions of dollars. Netflix is going in billions of dollars in debt trying to create more content, and YouTube has this gold mine of people that are basically just like you and me, Dave. And YouTube
creating content for free.
Right. But that amount of market share is amazing.
It's interesting
because most of the people that watch it have short attention spans. The lengths of the videos are about 2 to 3 minutes, and they do have all the funny cat videos.
The funny cat videos.
Do you enjoy the funny cat videos, Dr. Strange?
Yes, I do.
Well, I'll say when it comes to like young people, because I didn't even talk about children, but my kids, they love watching programs on YouTube. And most of the programs that they watch have to do with things like unboxings and even just families going to like Disneyland or stuff like that. They eat it up. They love that stuff. They love it. They're looking for that stuff more than any other kind of content.
It's rather peculiar. It's like I've noticed that with the younger generation as well, that they would rather watch people play video games than play video games themselves.
Correct.
Which I think is on the verge of idiocy.
Well, it's absolutely the way it is. That's absolutely true because, I have a pretty substantial video game collection. In fact, I'd actually like to talk about video games more on this program. But because we are on Twitch. We're on Twitch right now. You know what I mean? And I would like to try to reach out to that audience more. And the thing is, I get games from my kids all the time. And they'll play them. They'll play them for a little bit. But they spend more time, just like what you said, they spend more time actually watching YouTube videos of other people playing games than actually playing games. It's crazy.
Well, I mean,
it's crazy.
It makes sense on the point of that people are trying to get better and looking for different strategies and everything like that. A lot of people are watching it just for the certain streamer, like that guy that I had no idea who it was until they just started shoving his name in my face from every avenue. Ninja. I didn't know who he was. It's like, who is this? And then all of a sudden, oh, he's a streamer from Twitch. I'm like, why do I care?
What's amazing to me too with Twitch is, I've tried to go on there to just look at content and what's popular, like what's recommended. And I'll watch and I'm like, why does anybody like this? You know what I mean? And this guy's got thousands of views, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, I don't get it. So I got to figure it out. That's something you and I have to figure out too, Dave, is the best Twitch angle. You know what I mean? Because it's if you go on Twitch and you watch some of those videos, you're going to be kind of scratching your head, I think. Like, why are people into this? There's an audience. That's my point. An audience.
Well,
there
I'm not the best
had.
person to ask because I'm very old-fashioned and I don't get what these younglings are doing. Wait, I probably shouldn't say younglings. Anakin may be hiding somewhere.
Yeah,
that's true.
But it's also funny. There's people that are killing it on YouTube right now, and even with game content that can't break into Twitch. Their Twitch channels are like nothing. Like they have, for instance, Metal Jesus. He's somebody who does a lot of reviews of games, a lot of new games, mostly older games, very retro type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And his Twitch account is like a couple hundred people or something like that, and he's got like hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube. So there's something weird about that too. There's something interesting about that too.
Different age demographics, more than likely.
Yeah, that's good. I was just about to say the same thing. That's strange. More than likely, that's probably what it is. It's the age of the different demographics on the various platforms, and there is sometimes some duplication. When you follow someone on a bunch of different platforms, or too many, or a couple of platforms, go, I don't need to know what this person's doing over here. So I'm fine. I'm fine following them on this. I'm not going to also follow them on this. That just seems a bit extreme. Although much of the world today is about extremes. So there you go.
No,
I don't know.
I see it with Twitter too, because I usually because actually I can get much more engagement on Twitter with the content creator than I can on YouTube. The reason for that is the YouTube, they might have like 100,000 subscribers. Their Twitter is like a couple thousand. You know what I mean? Right. Followers, and that's it. So they're much more accessible on Twitter than they are on YouTube.
Yeah. I don't know. We're trying some different things here on the show, and we're going to continue to experiment with the format and the different ways that the show hopefully reaches out to people, hopefully connects with people, and brings people kind of into the fold, hopefully to talk about these topics that we talk about, such as the streaming wars and pop culture news and our later topic here. So, who knows? Who knows? I mean, other than I think Dr. Strange is right. I think age demographics on the various platforms does play a big factor, because it would make sense that an older viewer would be more interested to watch some of the retro game stuff. But then there are some, segments of the younger, the kids that enjoy the retro gaming too. So
my kids do. My kids like old games, yeah.
So it might even be like a generational at some point switch, and the platforms might even flip a little bit over time. So I'd be curious to see kind of how it all bears out. So
yeah, me too. Absolutely.
So you said you had another article for Streaming Wars?
I have one more. And this is really interesting. This is something that I came across. I hadn't heard it anywhere else. And this is really interesting to me. So AT&T, of course, owns Time Warner. So they're going to be relevant when it comes to HBO Max. And this says AT&T's secret streaming weapon could be Star Wars. This is a seekingalpha.com article. It's dated February 18th, so it's pretty recent. Here's a summary of the article for you. HBO Max may have greater rights to the Star Wars library than we all realized when initially assessing it. AT&T has apparently retained the rights it acquired from Disney for Star Wars' first 11 movies for TV and companion online on-demand rights. Such rights would presumably be transferable to the new HBO Max, though it might require integrating a live stream of Turner networks. Star Wars could conceivably be some of the most efficient content on the new service on a $1 per viewer basis. The AT&T Disney deal required a minimum number of ad breaks, so AT&T would have to run ads even for ad-free Max subscribers. But it could be a major advantage in the streaming wars. Had you heard about this, Dave?
No, this is crazy because the whole thing with Disney Plus was that they were getting their content back. So it's still crazy to me that there's still, because we've talked about this before, that even so some of these streaming services have paid these huge dollar amounts for things like Friends and stuff because of these old contracts that are still floating around.
Right.
At any point, it may show up on another service. It may leave the service that you subscribed, specifically for that and go somewhere else. A good example of this, which I brought up before, I keep telling people, if you haven't seen Justified, if you have Hulu, now is your chance. Justified is the first several seasons of Justified. I love that show. Highly, highly recommend Justified. Justified, as I told you, I was rewatching it for the third time on Amazon Prime. And then all of a sudden one day I go to log in and I have to pay to watch an episode. I'm like, well, that sucks. And then I go over to Hulu to find something else to watch. And lo and behold, guess what's on Hulu to watch actually right now as a part of that service? Justified. Justified is now on Hulu. So
just don't drink the apple pie.
No, you're correct, Dr. Strange. No one should drink the apple pie. That is a deep dive Justified reference. We have a fellow Rayleigh Gibbons. Well, I don't know if you're a fan of Rayleigh Gibbons, Doctor, but definitely do not drink the apple pie. That is a well-timed comment. But no, I hadn't heard this, but I'm not too surprised. But I am shocked that it's Star Wars. That is one of Disney Plus's major selling points, is that they actually, I think, just recently got, there's a couple of things they actually just recently got on Disney Plus they didn't have at launch that was Star Wars. I don't know. This is crazy to me. This is crazy. But nice. I look at CBS All Access too. You can watch Star Wars on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on Netflix still. But they're touting as being on CBS All Access. And it's funny because I've actually been watching, when I watch Star Trek right now, I've actually been watching it on Netflix because I'm having issues with CBS All Access whenever it tries to go to a commercial break on original series and next gen episodes or Enterprise or whatever. It hangs up and crashes the system.
Yeah.
I don't know what is, and then I tried to send a query. Look at me complaining about my streaming service on a live show. I tried to send my query actually to CBS and it didn't work. It failed through my television. Wow. So I'm going to have to log in on a browser and be like, yo, can you fix your thing? Because it don't work. But I've actually been watching Star Trek, even though I pay for CBS All Access, actually on Netflix. It's another reason I haven't got rid of Netflix yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
crazy.
crazy.
About crazy having, Star Wars on there. There's one thing that kind of struck me as strange. On the CW app, you can actually watch Blade, the TV series.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. I was curious where Blade was, because that television show, it's like you can't find it anywhere. I was curious, so I guess it's on CW. That's interesting.
That is interesting. That's weird.
CW Seed.
CW. Oh, it's Seed, no less. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So one of the things before I even found out about this article, but it was going through my head, is I don't have cable, but my parents do. My mom still has cable, and there are other places I go where they have cable, and I've had access to cable. And fairly recently, I think it was actually at the gym, I noticed that they were playing, one of the Star Wars movies. This was like right before Rise of Skywalker came on. They were playing it on TNT. And I was thinking about that, as I just casually was like, that's kind of interesting that, Warner, because I know Warner Brothers owns TNT, has apparently has these broadcast rights to Star Wars. And it's kind of interesting that those rights are what we're talking about here, that they could use this sort of as a backdoor to get it on their streaming platforms. And that would be a really good move by Warner Brothers if they did that. So we'll have to see if they take advantage of this or not.
It'd be interesting.
As long as I still get to see Mandalorian Season 2.
Yes.
Right.
That's the priority. Mandalorian Season 2. I agree, Dr. Strange. That for me is also a priority. Are we good with streaming wars?
Yeah, that's all I had.
Okay, so let us get into our main topic for the show. Again, I want to thank Dr. Hugo Strange for being here on the show. This is part 1 of our Joker Actors Retrospective. We're going to talk about the actors who've actually helped bring the Joker to life. The character of the Joker, actually, uniquely enough, actually now has 2 Oscar wins to the character's credit, which is very interesting. Of course, Joaquin Phoenix recently won the Oscar for his portrayal of the Joker. So we're going to talk about the Joker in sort of a deep dive retrospective, primarily focusing on the actors, but we're going to start off in a very unusual place. So Eric, if you don't mind sharing my screen. So we're going to talk about sort of the inspiration for the Joker, at least the fictional Joker anyway. Dr. Strange is going to be available here to chime in on the actual real Joker for us, wherever we kind of go astray. So I've got a couple things here I want to get into talking about The Man Who Laughs. It's a very interesting film. And while many of the Batman's rogues gallery owe a thank you to Chester Gould's Dick Tracy and the comic strip Lawman's parade of odd and grotesque foes, the Joker actually predates them all, and his first printed appearance and his birth comes from a truly dark and disturbing vision of German Expressionism. The Man Who Laughs, a film from 1927, was from Universal Pictures and was based on the Victor Hugo novel, The Laughing Man. The novel actually opens in 1690 and actually follows a character by the name of Gwynplaine. Gwynplaine is heir to a British lordship and is abducted by his father's enemies and surgically disfigured by a band of gypsies. Over time and after being abandoned, he finds a family with a carnival showman, a sort of family with a carnival showman, and Dee, a young abandoned girl that he actually finds in the snow. The film is actually by Paul Lenny, is intended as a follow-up of sense to the Universal's successful other series of horror films of the time, films such as The Hunchback of Notre Dame and actually The Phantom of the Opera. At one time, the lead was actually going to be none other than horror icon Lon Chaney.
Wow.
Now, Conrad Veidt actually portrayed the Man Who Laughs, or Gwynplaine, and had previously starred in the silent era classic film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Might be pronouncing it wrong. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is actually considered the first horror film. The sets and art direction are actually by Charles D. Hall, who would later also provide a similar aesthetic for both Frankenstein and Dracula. The Man Who Laughs had trouble upon its release due to its sexual boldness and choices made by the director, and it was attacked by a lot of censorship groups back in the day. Paul Lenny had hoped to actually do Dracula with Conrad Veidt, but it was not meant to be. This film and its visual style inspired both Bob Kane and Bill Finger to create the Joker. The influence is immediately visible, while the character does differ since he is a tragic figure. It is interesting how the tragic nature of this character comes back directly and indirectly, and actually leads not only to one, but two Oscar wins, I personally feel, in my opinion, for the later actors who would portray the Joker.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Now, it's interesting, too, I got just a few more notes here. The film not only inspires the creation of the Clown Prince of Crime, but also helps actually birth the horror genre as a whole, the horror film genre as a whole. And I just want to mention, there is an updated version of The Man Who Laughs. It actually stars Gerard Depardieu. It looks like a pizza's trash. I wouldn't bother watching it. And that has nothing to do with this silent era treasure, the original, the true Man Who Laughs. So I found this really interesting, the parallels. Actor delving into The Man Who Laughs and seeing the interesting connections, because Tim Burton's take on Batman and the Joker in the '89 movie is seems kind of slightly off center and works so incredibly well. But when you go back and you look at The Man Who Laughs, and you look at the art direction, you look at the cinematography, you look at what they do in terms of how they're playing with light and shadow, and the portrayal, obviously, of our tragic hero here, our tragic aunt. You're gonna have to watch the film, make your own conclusions on this character. But the character of Gwynplaine,
you have to see it.
It's interesting because I feel like the whole reason the bullet gets deflected in '89 and actually disfigures the Joker in the way and freezes his face is actually a nod to The Man Who Laughs. I feel like stylistically, in terms of the contributions that Tim Burton brought to this, when you consider that Charles D. Hall, who was the art director for The Man Who Laughs, actually worked on Dracula and also worked on Frankenstein. You can see the parallels. See that. So this is a very interesting film. I would encourage our viewers, our listeners right now, to actually look into checking out and learning more about The Man Who Laughs if you're curious about the Joker. We're not going to get into the whole Jerry Robinson, who drew the Joker playing card thing. We'll save that maybe for another episode. But it's very, very interesting, the importance that The Man Who Laughs actually plays, obviously, in the creation of the Joker. But its influence looms large. It looms large, not only in what happens in the '89 film, but the role that this plays in informing, I feel like, not only some of what Heath Ledger does, but also some of what Joaquin Phoenix does later in his Oscar-winning turn as the Joker. It's very, very interesting. So tell me, we'll start off with our guest here, to start. So tell me, Dr. Strange, have you ever heard about the film The Man Who Laughs?
I've heard about it, but I have yet to see it.
How do you feel like The Man Who Laughed, kind of this film, how do you feel like this connects to actually the real Joker, the one who was once your patient at Arkham Asylum?
Well, he does have that look of horror upon him, and looks like he's always laughing and smiling. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have on this, because again, I have yet to see the film. But from what you talked about, he was an anti-hero. Joker is very much not an anti-hero. He is a sadistic son of a bitch.
Interesting. So tell me, Eric, had you heard about The Man Who Laughs? Like, how much did you actually know? Had you heard about this film?
The reason this actually came to my attention was because of a blog, and I wish I could name the blog because he's actually good to our show. He retweets our stuff and things like that on Twitter, and I can't remember the name of his blog. I know the person who does his name is Dave, but he does a very good history of comics blog. And he did something about the Joker when the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film came out, which is really what's inspired this episode. This episode is, really this is a tribute to Joaquin Phoenix and all the awards that he won, because he basically did a clean sweep of all the major awards, not just the Oscars, but Golden Globes, the SAG Awards, and also the British equivalent of the Oscars. He won all of them for this role of the Joker. But it all starts here. It really all starts here. As the origin of the Joker visually in the comics. I mean, just look at this. I mean,
yeah,
it's incredibly obvious, but also the effect it's had on the films, and me not realizing, because I remember people actually kind of debating in the Tim Burton Batman film about the whole thing of the Joker's being Nicholson's Joker being deformed. And some people didn't like that because they're like, well, that's not in the comics. You know what I mean? And it's kind of funny because when you talk about sort of these nerd arguments or whatever, a lot of us didn't realize, I didn't realize, because I was a kid when that came out, I didn't realize, well, if you were a real nerd, you would know actually the original Joker was deformed. You know what I mean?
Right.
You would have gone right back to The Man Who Laughs. That's where that came from. And then, of course, Heath Ledger's Joker also has the deformity. And that's the reason that he has he's got the cuts. It's a different style of deformity, but he's deformed. And then what's really interesting to me is bringing it all full circle now with Joaquin Phoenix portrayal. And I'm the one who was saying, like, the one thing I don't like about the Joker is to me, the Joker is not an anti-hero. He's a villain. That's who the Joker is. That's my version of the Joker, the Joker that speaks to me. But I'm wrong, right? Because when you get the real origins of the Joker, we're talking about the real origins of the Joker with The Man Who Laughs. He is a tragic anti-hero, So it's really interesting when you think about that, and that's basically, we're full circle now with the Joker. He's right back to where he started.
It's interesting and there's sort of like a tragic love story angle as well. It's just interesting. It's just very interesting for those of us that are curious about the character of the Joker and I'd always heard, in all the biographies I've read and a lot of the information, they always connect it back to The Man Who Laughs when they talk about, the inspiration and the origins for the Joker. And I just found it just so interesting to see how not just the actors themselves, but how the filmmakers and the directors have managed a way to pay homage to The Man Who Laughs without really going out of their way to call attention to itself. It's like, if you're just familiar with The Man Who Laughs.
Because I think most people don't catch on to it, because this is a very old movie and most people haven't seen it or even heard of it. I couldn't find it. You know what I mean? I was trying to find it so I could watch it for this program, and I couldn't find it. Where did you end up watching it, Dave?
I used my dark arts and found a way to watch it through YouTube.
There you go.
Which I don't encourage people to do, but no, it's just really interesting to see all the connections. When you look at the craft and the skill, again, not just by the actors, but also by the filmmakers. That was my big revelation is how they all worked together to bring these, homages to The Man Who Laughs, to bring those to the forefront. Because it's just really interesting. So if you're curious about the Joker, if you want to go back and see a lot of the original inspiration, The Man Who Laughs from 1928, this is going to be your starting point. But also too, I was surprised at how this film was intended to be a follow-up because of Universal's success with The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera. And when you dig into this story, this Victor Hugo story that adapted for the film, it's readily apparent why they thought that, oh, well, this would be a good follow-up. This would be a great follow-up. And I don't know. It's very interesting. Its connections to the birth of the horror film genre. It's truly interesting. And I recommend people try and find a way to seek it out. You can also just watch some terribly interesting videos about it on YouTube. And the connection, visually, when you talk about the connections to Frankenstein, the connections to Dracula, it's just terribly interesting. I was really kind of shocked at the role that this film has kind of subtly played, and as Eric said, how it kind of brings it all back in a sense, with Joaquin Phoenix and the new Joker film. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. Again, big kudos and shout out to the directors, people like Tim Burton and Todd Phillips, who managed to also find a way, even from their standpoint, to call back to this classic silent era film. And it's interesting too, because this film fell right in that pocket, and they had the choice to actually either have it be a silent film or to actually have it be a talkie. And the whole reason that they decided to just make it a silent film is because Conrad Veidt, you can't see it, he's actually got these wire things actually pulling his face back into this grin. And it made it hard for him to talk. So they decided, well, we'll just go ahead and make it a silent film because he's having a hard time talking anyway. And the gentleman who did the makeup actually for this is the same gentleman who did the makeup for Frankenstein. Wow. It's crazy the influence, the subtle influence that this film actually plays. It's very interesting. It was very interesting. I really enjoyed doing the research into this film and seeing all the connections that are there, and some of the connections I didn't know that actually connect back to just film in general. It's very interesting. So that's where our conversation starts. Does anyone else have anything interesting to add about The Man Who Laughs?
Well, I wonder what the right situation is with that film and why it's so hard to find. I would be interested to figure that out. I'm going to have to do some research and find out what the issue is with the rights of that film and why it seems so inaccessible right now.
I have no idea. I didn't even look into it from that standpoint. But it is, it's just one of those things. I don't know if someone's sitting on it for a reason, or maybe it's locked up in someone's library. There may be a movie studio that controls the rights that doesn't think that it's worth bothering to digitize it to make it available in a better format. It is a little strange to watch because all silent films, the acting is with the eyes and the body language, so positions are a little bit more distorted. But it was interesting because again, watching the distortions that Conrad Veidt was doing, it harkened back to Joaquin Phoenix's dancing. After he kills the guys on the subway, and I was just like, wow, this is just so. And whether they just came up with that on the set and someone suggested it or not, it's very interesting that if it wasn't deliberate and it was in the moment, how in a weird way it harkens back to the contortions and the things that Conrad Veidt was doing to help bring this character's torment to life. And I kept thinking, it's interesting how even if it's not directly inspired by that, how it harkens back. It's just very interesting.
Absolutely.
If they were smart, they would have released that at the same time as the Joker movie.
Yeah,
DVD.
That would have been really cool. Or even have like a special collector's edition. You know what I mean? Where you get the two films like they did with Scarface. I have that, the Scarface where it comes with the original Scarface, and that's also really cool to watch how much they took from the original Scarface for the Al Pacino version. But yeah, that would be so cool if they did that with the Joker. They did something like that.
That would have been.
Yeah, that would have been a great,
like a crazy Mondo poster or something like that with it too.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a yeah, for sure. So are we good here with the Man Who Laughs?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, cool. So real quick here, just before we switch over, I want to remind everyone, thank everyone for participating in the comments. Please remember, if you comment on the show, you are entered into a drawing to possibly win another sketch card. Again, this one is for the Joker. This is a Batman the Legend sketch card. This is an official Cryptozoic release. You can tell by the little hollow foil on the back. The artwork here is by me, and you're being entered into this. Again, shipping in the United States only, please. And let's have everyone be at least 18 years of age. All right, so we got a comment from Orville Nation. Big support of the show. That's awfully kind. Thank you.
Thank you, PJ. We appreciate it. We appreciate all your support and the support of Orville Nation to the show. They're great friends of the show. Orville Nation is fantastic. PJ is fantastic as a leader in the sort of streaming community, and he's all about helping out shows and things like that. PJ, you're awesome, and I had a great time being on his channel, and I think Dave, you're going to be on there fairly soon. So,
yep, should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, we'll be talking about Orville here coming up. Because I'm ready to get back into some fun Star Trek kind of stuff, because all the current Star Trek stuff doesn't feel like Star Trek stuff.
Well, PJ's been talking a lot about Picard, actually. I mean, that's why I was on his show. I was talking about Picard. So they talk about Picard a lot. And I also know that they're trying. I just heard he's trying to get some stuff with Space Command. I don't know if you've heard of Space Command. I can't. The writer doesn't. I can't. His name doesn't pop into my head right away. He used to write. He wrote for Deep Space Nine and other Star Trek and stuff like that. He has his own show called Space Command, and now it's going to be a web series. So,
cool.
So PJ's always on top of it. He's always finding these neat, cool sci-fi things and stuff like that. And he gets some great guests. You know, he had Corin Nemec, from Stargate, and Parker Lewis can't lose. And I really recommend that interview, because Corin Nemec is really good as far as engaging as a guest. Because quite frankly, sometimes you see some people, celebrities, on trying to do like a YouTube thing, and they're not very good. They're really not. You know what I mean? They're not that engaging. And Corin Nemec was really good. And he's had some other actors, like he had the actor that played Icheb from Star Trek Voyager. He had him on. He's had Martok, the actor who played Martok. So some great content on Orville Nation.
So tell us.
There's the name, Mark
Zechary.
Zechary. He's a writer, and he has a series now called Space Command that he's been working on for a long time.
So tell us, Dr. Strange, are you familiar with the TV show The Orville?
I've heard of it. I've seen snippets of it. It seemed like it was probably better than Picard from what I've seen.
Interesting.
Or at least from what you've told me about Picard.
Yeah. We know that you're awfully busy, treating the patients at Arkham Asylum, and trying to help reform the patients there, and hopefully in your work help keep the citizens of Gotham City safe. So I understand you don't have a lot of time for sci-fi shows and the such. So I was just curious if you were familiar with it. That's all.
I am. I know Seth MacFarlane is the one that created it.
Yep, that's true. So is that good? Are we ready to move on to?
Well, Dave, PJ gave you a good plug, or something, a good opportunity to plug, because he says he wants to interview about your comics, which I'm sure he's talking about Red Skirts. He wants to know more about Red Skirts, and I think he would like to do a program where he talks to you about Red Skirts.
No, yeah, I would love to talk about Red Skirts. I'd be happy to talk about any of the various comics I've worked on. That would be a lot of fun. So yeah, for sure. After actually watching so much of the Orville, I'd love to work actually on an Orville comic. I think that would be really fun. I quite enjoy the show, and I think it would be a lot of fun to work on that. They've got a good crew actually doing the Orville comic series already, though, so I don't know what the chances of that are, but it would be fun to work on. So that's for sure. So that'd be fun.
That'd be something fun for us to review in the future too. Is the Orville?
No, comic. yeah, that's definitely. So if we're good with The Man Who Laughs, are we ready to move on to our next Joker?
Absolutely. He's one of the best as far as I'm concerned.
I apologize if I seem distracted. I do have 2 therapy cats in here from Selena.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. So we're obviously our next Joker we're going to talk about is I don't see how you get more classic than this particular portrayal of the Joker. I did kind of put together some notes here. So it's interesting to note that the murderous Joker undergoes many changes after his debut in Batman #1 from 1940. None more noteworthy than after the instatement of the Comics Code Authority in the wake of Wertham's 1954 book, The Seduction of the Innocent. The Senate trials and the witch hunt to follow have forever changed the influence of the comics on American culture, and the impact was also felt on characters such as the Joker. The evil murderous Joker was transformed into what legendary Batman editor Denny O'Neil said at the time, and he would often refer to as just a wacky, ribald nuisance. And that leads us actually to Cesar Romero's portrayal of the Joker in the 1966 Batman television series. Cesar's Joker is very much definitive for a classic take on the post-Comics Code crackdown. Romero knew nothing about the Joker based on interviews and was offered the role by Batman 66 producer William Dozier. He took the role after seeing the pilot episode that actually starred Frank Gorshin as the Riddler and reading the script that he received for his first episode. Now, probably the most commonly known thing about Romero's Joker is the white grease paint makeup that they would actually apply over his mustache. Romero considered his mustache his signature look, and he refused to shave off the mustache for this role. Not much is known about how Cesar felt about the later portrayals of the Joker, but on a CBS This Morning interview from 1989 that I found, he was dismayed by the fact that a lot of the reviewers had told parents not to take their children to see the Tim Burton film, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Wow.
And in that interview, he still had his trademark mustache. I mean, he very much considered it, that was his look. And Romero at one time was a very much a highly sought after actor and a bit of a Latin heartthrob back in the day. So there's some interesting information about this particular portrayal of the Joker. I do like Cesar Romero's take on the Joker. There is an interesting nod actually to Cesar Romero's Joker that we'll talk about in our part 2 and how that actually connects up with another actor's portrayal of the Joker. But tell me, Eric, give me some of your thoughts on Cesar Romero's Joker from the 1966 Batman television series.
Well, I think in this era, he's highly underrated. This is the first Joker that I grew up with because I wasn't even, I've talked to you before, I didn't really read superhero comics. I read G.I. Joe and Transformer comics as a kid. The way that I got access to superheroes was through the cartoons, or in this case, we actually had a live action version that I had access to as a child, And so this is like my first Joker. This is the Joker to me, you know what I mean? Or at least it was until actually one of our later incarnations we're actually going to talk about in part 2, who I think is the definitive Joker. He's my pick for the definitive Joker. But this is the first one I was exposed to. This is the first Joker I was exposed to. And I think his portrayal actually still holds up. I think even if you're not a big fan of the Adam West Batman series, I think this portrayal of the Joker still holds up and still has a place, you know what I mean, in terms of the Joker, because I do think that sort of whimsical, kind of like just kind of like silly, like a clown, you know what I mean? He really is like a clown. I really like this portrayal of the Joker. And even when I think other aspects of the Adam West Batman series haven't aged that well. I think this one has. I think he's highly underrated in today's culture.
Well, and it's always sometimes easy to dismiss the first. And while we nod to the inspiration of Conrad Veidt in The Man Who Laughs, obviously Cesar Romero's Joker, this is our first live action Joker. This is where it all starts.
Right.
And obviously there are things that Cesar Romero did that carry over into every iteration of the Joker. So he does originate, the Joker in live action. And it's always easy to be dismissive of who comes first. You see that all the time. But this is definitely the classic, in my mind, probably the most definitive interpretation of the post, crackdown, comics code crackdown of the Joker. It's classic in every sense of the word. This version lasts so long, and its influence is so long reading after the 66 television series that if you listen to a Power Records Batman adventure, this is the version of the Joker that's on that. Even though Romero doesn't voice it, the guy doing Joker, he's doing Cesar Romero. When you watch, the Joker and Scooby-Doo, you're getting someone's version of Cesar Romero's Joker. And superpowers, you name it. Like this version of the Joker is that definitive version that lasts the longest, in my personal opinion. So tell us, Dr. Strange, how does Cesar Romero's interpretation of the Joker for the 1966 television series, how does this relate or reflect to the actual real Joker, who, again, was once your patient at Arkham Asylum?
That was a time of his life where my treatments were actually working. We will call him Happy Joker.
Ah, Happy Joker.
All right. It's more like a high school bully, if that makes any sense. He was always just out there. It's like, oh, I'm going to get you, Batman. I'm going to, give you a super wedgie from like this giant crane of whatever joke he had up his sleeve. I mean, it was all about the punchline, all about the jokes. It was before he became murderous again.
Interesting.
Theatrics. Also a lot of theatrics.
So this
would make a lot of sense.
This is the Joker taking his meds, right? Is that what I'm getting? This is the version of the Joker when he was actually taking his medication.
This is the Joker medicated. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I will say also, in regards to Joaquin Phoenix portrayal of the Joker, visually, I think Joaquin Phoenix Joker is based on Cesar Romero in terms of his clothes and the makeup and everything. I think the Joaquin's version of the Joker is absolutely visually an homage to the Cesar Romero Joker.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that.
I can see that as well.
It's interesting because I think of the 89 one being closer, but the 89 version of the Joker is actually a bit of a departure from this.
Yes.
And until you look at them kind of side by side, you don't realize in terms of color palette and choices how they did make a conscious choice to move it in a slightly different direction. It's still the Joker when you see it, but visually they did make some different choices that deviated from the classic interpretation of the character. And I do think that Joaquin's is much more in line. That's an interesting observation.
Yeah, it was one of the first things people I saw saying was when they first saw Joaquin Phoenix, when the first pictures were shown, I remember when those came out and people, hey, that's the Cesar Romero look. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Interesting. So are we good here with the 66 interpretation of the Joker?
Yes, and if anybody hasn't checked that one out, you check that out. Oh, we do have some other ones to mention before we get to this one, though.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I am jumping ahead.
Because and these were
we were
talking before. These are hard to find because these guys unfortunately didn't get a lot of attention. So let's go ahead and be the people that do give them some attention, because these are like the forgotten Jokers. We're going to go through like the forgotten Jokers. from the animated Jokers. That's not the right one. Make sure I can have the. I have a little bit of a technical issue here. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna.
Okay.
So, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about some of these, the first animated Jokers, the first voice actors that actually did the Joker character.
So I've got a bit of a lull here. I want to remind everyone, hopefully everyone who's watching, if you come into the comment section and you comment here on this episode, you'll be entered into a drawing to possibly win this Joker sketch card. This Joker sketch card is actually from Batman the Legend set. This is actually an officially released set by Cryptozoic Entertainment, and obviously in partnership there with DC Comics. This is a hand-drawn original sketch on this card. The art is by me. It is our featured character, main topic of this show, which is actually the Joker. This is sort of a classic interpretation of the Joker, probably more in line with the Cesar Romero version, actually, we were just speaking of. So, yeah, this is a one of one. Want to encourage everyone, please come into the – all you have to do to be entered into this is just come into the live, leave us a couple comments or leave a comment or two. Please join the discussion talking about the Joker, and you'll be entered. Again, U.S. Shipping only, and please be at least at or above the age of 18 years of age. Okay.
All right. So this is these are the, like I said, I would call them sort of the forgotten Jokers, and there's actually a few of them. So what we've got here is
Larry Storch.
From 1968, this was Batman with Robin the Boy Wonder, the cartoon. And we've got Larry Storch here. He also did them in the new Scooby-Doo movies in 1972.
Yep.
And you can see the kind of the looks of the Joker and those different iterations.
Yep.
I believe I did see the new Scooby-Doo movies, but I don't think I ever saw Batman with Robin the Boy Wonder. Did you ever see that, Dave?
Oh, not only have I seen it, I actually have the DVD release that came out many years ago.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
Yeah, obviously I'm a rabid Batman collector, so I have those actually on a DVD. And then once upon a time, I actually had them on VHS too. They had a line where they took a lot of because the Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder was produced around the same time as the older Aquaman cartoons, if you're familiar with those, where they had it was Aquaman and Aqualad, and they rode around on seahorses, and they had the walrus that was sort of like the silly sidekick. But then I also had the Superman and the Superboy cartoons. Those are all produced. Those are all early Filmation productions. They are so comics accurate. It is crazy. And they're wonderful if you love the original classic comic stories. They don't flinch from anything, whether it makes sense or not. They just go for it. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, all of those. And actually, I think it was either the early 90s or late 80s, they actually released those on VHS, and they were all part of a Superpowers animated collection.
Oh, cool.
But it actually didn't connect back to the actual versions of the cartoons that accompanied the toy line, but it was all these classic Filmation versions, and very interesting stuff. I love those old cartoons. So,
Dr. Strange, are you familiar with either of these versions of the Joker, from the Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder or from the new Scooby-Doo movies?
Not particularly, but I am familiar with the cartoons he was referencing. With Aquaman and everyone. I do remember when I was younger watching the cartoons with the Joker and everything, but I can't remember because it was so long ago. Now, the really weird, wonky Flash vibrating through walls, now that I remember, because What has been seen cannot be unseen.
Yeah, like I'm not sure if I ever saw the Batman and Robin and the Boy Wonder one. I do think I saw the Scooby Doo's, but I was really young when I saw those. So then we go up to 1977, and we have the New Adventures of Batman, and that was Lenny. I don't know if I can pronounce his last name. Weinrib, Lenny Weinrib. And I don't know if I watched this one. I don't know if I ever saw the New Adventures of Batman. Did you, Dave?
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite, Batman cartoons. Is actually the Filmation version. They actually kind of reused this title many years later for actually a version of, well, I guess they call it the New Adventures. The New Adventures of Batman is probably, for me, the Batman show that was the most formative, along with the 66 Batman TV show. But I loved this particular version. It's so Filmation, though. It's just, if you're familiar with Filmation cartoons, this is the one that actually has Batmite in it. If anyone remembers the animated Batmite, he actually comes into play actually with the New Adventures of Batman. And okay, all right. So while we're talking about this, let's do this here real quick. If you'll share my screen. For those people not familiar, this is the intro for the New Adventures of Batman, which was the show for the 1970s. I love this version. This actually has Adam West and Burt Ward doing the voices. There, of course, is the infamous Batmite. And the animation in this intro is actually really cool. All the classic Bat vehicles are represented. There's, of course, the Joker, who we're primarily featuring. Very unusual.
That Catwoman looks almost exactly like. Gosh, I'm having a brain fart, but from Christopher Nolan's Batman movie series.
Yeah.
What's the actress's name?
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, Anne Hathaway. That looked exactly like Anne Hathaway.
So that's the intro there for the New Adventures of Batman. Like I said, besides the 60s, and Dr. Hugo Strange there.
There we go. So you're familiar with this one.
Yes, I'm familiar with that one. And to show you the Filmation cartoons, there's this collection that's out there.
Oh, nice.
It was pretty wild seeing Hawkman with a blaster on his hand.
Do you use any of these cartoons to aid in your treatment of the patients at Arkham Asylum, Dr. Strange?
Yes, I do. And they still, to this day, make them all highly underestimate Aquaman.
I could see that. And then we have actually a comment here. I did mention that earlier. Yes, Adam West was the voice of Batman in the New Adventures of Batman, and Burt Ward was the voice of Robin. I talked earlier about the influence of Cesar Romero's Joker. Of course, Adam West and Burt Ward's legacy as the characters also loom large and inform a lot of later productions of the characters. It's so, for someone like me, who grew up with the 60s TV series and then segued into the New Adventures of Batman, these classic portrayals of the characters, I mean, you don't, in my mind anyway, when you come to Batman, you don't get any more definitive, because Romero's Joker, again, as well as these versions of Batman and Robin, they're the same versions. Like if you listen to the Power Records stories, if you listen to any of the Peter Pan back in the day, they had you turn the page, and you follow along with the story. That is the classic versions. And of course, Adam West would come back later and provide the voice for Batman, even on the Superpowers later cartoon shows as well. Yep, and yeah, Batmite. Again, some people love him and some people hate him.
Man of Sand said, "I remember the character of Batmite, and he said he had a love crush on Batgirl. Do you remember that aspect of it?"
Yeah, well, they showed it in the intro. Actually, Batgirl is featured pretty heavily in the intro. She comes in on her motorcycle, again, very much homaging the 60s television series. Because, again, that was the most successful version of Batman. And, again, that influence looms large.
Yeah, he also says that he really liked the theme, the action music in that show. He was a fan of the music.
It's a very classic filmation. This series is, for me, it's one of the most important of the Batman versions of Batman in animation for me. And when I think of Batman, I think of the classic version. I think of the way that, although Neil Adams ushered in this particular portrayal of the character as we think of it, I think of Jim Aparo and I think of the style of the New Adventures of Batman.
Very cool.
So no, yeah, for sure.
And then we have another of what I kind of call the forgotten Jokers. This one I do remember better because I was a fan of the Superpowers team, Galactic Guardians. Yeah. So I used to watch that as a kid. So one of the things I remember was a lot of those shows was how absent the Joker was from the Super Friends and things like that. It was very, we only got him, I think, the one time, in that whole line. And Super Friends is really what got me into superheroes. In fact, the reason I consider myself a DC guy is in large part because of Super Friends. That's what really got me into it and made me love those characters so much. So as I said, these guys I don't think get a whole lot of attention, but we're going to give them some attention here.
And I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Man of Siam.
Yeah, Man of Sand.
Man of Sand. His last comment there, that is very true. Frank Welker, a.k.a. Fred from Scooby-Doo. And also, for those of you who don't know, that is Megatron from Transformers.
Isn't that cool? That's pretty cool.
Legendary voice actor.
I don't think many people know that he portrayed the Joker. I don't think many people know that,
I had no idea either.
No, yeah. It used to be that you had those great character actors who could do all those different voices, and if you are familiar enough with them enough, you could sometimes hear them when they do different versions, different kinds of characters. But sometimes they're so good at being a chameleon that you don't even know. But no, yeah. Frank Welker is a legendary voice actor and done tons and tons of stuff.
Van Sand also was a Super Friends fan. He said Super Friends was a big breakthrough show, and I agree. And he said it's because it had an ensemble, and that's exactly right. In fact, Dave, you and I have this discussion quite a bit, where I always talk about growing up with things like the Superman live action movie with Christopher Reeves. Even like the Batman film with Nicholson and Michael Keaton and things like that. As a kid, I was like, where the hell is Superman? Or where the hell is Batman in the Superman movie? Why isn't Superman in the Batman movie? You know what I mean? Because I didn't really understand rights or anything like that. And I was like, hey, why is there only one superhero? Because I knew they knew each other. I knew that they knew weach other and they went on adventures together. So as a kid, I was always like wondering, where is everybody? And I think I got that from Super Friends, because Super Friends, it did have everybody, and I was just like, so. It did.
Well, and Challenge of the Super Friends is probably still in my mind, until you get, obviously, the Batman animated series, the Superman animated cartoons, the later Justice League cartoons. There's been some really wonderful stuff that's done. been done since that time. But for the longest time, Challenge of the Super Friends was the standard, for those of us that were diehard comic book fans, but who also enjoyed animation, because you got a lot of the classic hero and villain rivalries, and the introduction of characters that typically you wouldn't get, such as Green Lantern, and the fact that you even got Sinestro, so you had Green Lantern as greatest arch enemy. One of the strangest things about Super Friends was the fact that for Batman, the arch enemy was like, Catwoman or Scarecrow, or what I mean. It wasn't Joker. Joker didn't have a very huge role to play. It seems like in all those cartoons, and I'm not honestly sure why. I'm sure there's got to be a reason for it, but I'm not honestly sure why. Of course, Madison also points out that the voice announcer and narrator for Super Friends, he wants to know who was it. Was it Ted Knight? I honestly don't remember. I know because it was the same guy who did the intros, I think, for Saturday Night Live.
It was Bill Woodson. Bill Woodson.
Oh, okay.
I saw the question and I went and looked it up. It was Bill Woodson. He was the narrator for Challenge of the Super Friends. And he was not credited. That's why apparently he's hard to find. Little article I found said he was not credited.
Yeah, the classic meanwhile in the halls of justice.
Exactly.
Which
I love that.
Which to me is a callback to the 60s Batman TV show again. Meanwhile, in his unassuming bookstore, the bookworm is up to no good. It's all, you know what I mean? It's just the influence of the 60s Batman show is huge. So.
Yeah, and he also mentions that Super Friends gave DC a big boost versus Marvel because they didn't have a similar Avengers show at the time. And I agree with that. I think it's also kind of why they made the Spider-Man series, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, was kind of meant to compete with Super Friends. And that's actually the Spider-Man. That was my first Spider-Man, was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which I love that. I love that cartoon. But again, that's why I consider myself a DC guy, is because of Super Friends and because Marvel didn't have anything equivalent to that I was watching, that I was aware of, So I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Is the Doctor familiar with that version of the Joker?
Are you familiar with that version, Doctor Strange?
Super Friends? Yes, I am. That's the one that had Cyborg and Firestorm, am I correct?
Right.
Yes, it is.
That was like the last season. Cyborg was introduced in the last season. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the one where Batman cried. I remember that
now. Yes, that's the episode where Batman cried. You are correct. And I want to thank Manastan for commenting. I'll plug it one last time. Anyone who joins in and comments actually during the show is entered into a drawing to possibly win this Joker sketch card. Again, all the names are just thrown into a hat, and I pull one out, and that's who wins. This is an original one-of-a-kind sketch card. This was from the Cryptozoic and DC Comics set, Batman Man of Legend. This is a one-of-one. You can tell it's official. It's got the little hollow foil there on the cover on the corner. So I want to thank and encourage anyone else who's watching the show who hasn't commented yet, get in and make that comment and get entered into the contest.
Cool.
And
speaking of comments, Manastan has a couple more that are interesting to me because I didn't know this. He said that there was also a 60s Wonder Woman show, too, of a similar campy style. I'm not familiar with that one.
I've seen some of that. I think it was an unaired pilot because I've seen it like once.
He says, though, it may have been short-lived and less known.
Yeah.
And then also, we had Orville Nation here earlier, and he says Seth MacFarlane did a great homage to Super Friends on Family Guy. I don't think I've seen that episode. Have you?
No, I don't think I have.
But I would like to. I would like to see Seth MacFarlane's take on the Super Friends. That'd be kind of fun. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the Griffin household. Yeah. Stewie is contemplating yet another way to take over the world. Yeah. So very cool. Was that it for the Forgotten Jokers? Did you have?
Let me just double check because again, I don't want to be like everybody else and forget to talk about these people. You know what I mean? So
right.
I
think I'm trying to remember because I know one of them actually came back and did the voice for. If I remember correctly, actually did the voice for the Joker in the Batman animated series. Legends, I think it's the Legends of the Dark Knight episode where they showed different iterations and versions of Batman over time. So they had a segment that was like the Dick Sprang Golden Age inspired look, and then they had a Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns style, and then then eventually they had the classic Batman animated version, and actually homaged and talked about the different interpretations of Batman through the episode.
Do you remember what the name of that episode was?
I think it was Legends of the Dark Knight. I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, actually, I remember that episode, Legends of the Dark Knight. Right, I'm actually looking it up. Of the Dark Knight Batman animated series, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of curious when you bring that up.
At least I thought it was. I could be wrong. As we all start checking our
phones, I'm having trouble finding them because you bringing it up just made me curious. I'm having trouble finding him or finding the cast for that episode.
Yeah, if you want to move on to the next one of the Forgotten Jokers, and then I will see if I can look that up.
We're actually all caught up up to Nick Nicholson. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's get into Nicholson here. And what we can do is we can clear this up and actually talk about it maybe on the next episode.
Right.
Because I have a feeling we'll be talking about another animated Joker on the next episode for sure.
Oh yeah, we're gonna. There's we were talking off air, and there's many more animated Jokers than I realized. There's a ton of them. Ton of them. And also, Madison had a question. I don't know if either of you know, but he was asking, has Filmation done any other superheroes besides Batman?
I think Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, do you want to answer this question for our commenter, Madison? Has Filmation done any other superheroes, like superhero cartoons, besides Batman?
Aquaman, Superman, the Teen Titans, Green Lantern, Flash, Justice League, Hawkman, The Atom, and Plastic Man.
Wow.
So
Filmation did all those, huh? Wow.
And Superboy as well, because they did Superman and Superboy.
Superboy. Forgot about him.
I think Plastic Man was the one I used to watch. I used to watch the Plastic Man cartoon.
Well, there was a Hanna-Barbera one too. So
okay, I think I watched the Hanna-Barbera one then.
Yeah, the Hanna-Barbera one is the one most people
I loved Plastic Man growing up as a kid.
Filmation had the rights to the DC heroes, and they did just about anything that they could get their hands on. The gems, in my opinion, and I did mention that, Madison. Yes, there was the classic Plastic Man cartoon that people think of was Hanna-Barbera.
Okay, yeah, got that one mixed up.
But I do want to point out that if you were a DC Comics fan, if you loved the classic original stories, like the stuff from like the Silver Age in the 50s and the 60s, the Aquaman cartoons, Filmation that was released out on DVD several years ago. It is totally worth the price of admission. The Superman, the Superboy stuff that Filmation did is really great. I love the New Adventures of Batman. That's one of my favorite Batman cartoons of all time. You have to be a fan of those classic stories, though. For a certain members of the later generation, I don't see how they could watch that stuff and enjoy it anymore. To be honest, I think our society is just in a different place.
They
but
want Adventure Time. They can enjoy good quality TV.
It's a good point. But I will bring this up because years ago I helped organize a convention, and actually the funds from the convention are actually being used to help send kids to actually a summer camp. It was done in the back room of a school, and they had an area where they could show audio visual stuff. And then we had I had brought a bunch of this stuff and I had it playing. So it's kind of like whenever you go to a convention and you've got like the movie room, that's showing movies like 24 hours a day. So I gave all these DVDs over, and all the kids were just mesmerized by like Super Friends and Aquaman and all these classic Filmation cartoons. A lot of the really good Filmation DC stuff is the stuff that they were doing in the 60s. I personally love the Aquaman cartoons. They're a lot of fun. They're kind of silly with the seahorse and the walrus and all that kind of thing. Filmation very much was a big believer in the comic relief sidekick kind of character. I mean, if you watch New Adventures of Batman, I mean, you see Orko and Batmite coming a mile away. It's no wonder that that character eventually was there. No, I highly recommend them. If you're not familiar with them, definitely seek them out. If you want to see the classic version of Brainiac animated, it's crazy. This stuff is, and they didn't shy away from anything.
Give that man some pants.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But no, they're great.
We got a few more chats here. I want to make sure that we at least try to address these questions. So he also asked if did they ever do a Captain Marvel animated?
Well, they did. That is a great omission on both of our parts there, Dr. Strange. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Filmation not only did the live action version where they're in the Winnebago, the Saturday morning version, and that actually does have some animated sequences in it, but they did do that is another one of my favorites. I don't know why it has never been released on DVD. It absolutely drives me nuts. I'm still holding on to some old VHS copies. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. The Filmation Captain Marvel stuff.
Streaming app.
Yeah, exactly. They actually went through the trouble to restore the live action series, and the animated one for some reason is just being allowed to languish, and I don't understand why. It is literally a travesty. So let's see. Okay. All right. If you don't mind sharing my screen, we're going to give this a go. There might be an ad on the front end of it. I don't know. Yep. Shazam. This is the intro. This is a great Filmation animated series, especially if you love the classic C.C. Beck version of Captain Marvel. These pop-ups are so annoying. Just the classic style. I mean, this is Captain Marvel the way everyone remembers it. I actually have hanging above my desk here in my studio, actually a original animation cell from this from the Filmation Captain Marvel Shazam series.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought it at auction. Let's see, would have been 30. Wow, is it that long ago? I'm getting so old. Over 30 years ago at auction. Paid a pretty penny for it. It actually has the original background painting too.
This actually looks pretty good.
This is like if you love Shazam, i.e. Captain Marvel, this is the cartoon for you. This cartoon is great. It's a lot of fun. It's the flying sequences, and I mean it's just really great. It's really great. I love this. I don't understand why this has never been made available. It's just one of those things. I don't understand why this isn't on the DC app. Like, why didn't someone go in and restore this? I love the live action version, but no, yeah, that this is such a classic version of the character. It's just I love it. So yeah. And it may be possible to watch some of these episodes actually on YouTube. I just wish that Warner's would have went in and actually restored them, and kind of brought them back. And I wonder again what the legal rights reason is why they can't or won't do it. There's some reason why.
Maybe they will for Shazam too.
That would be great. That would be great. But if you do love Captain Marvel, of course, Filmation, they also did the classic live action version, with Mentor and the Winnebago and the whole thing. And you can actually watch those on the DC Universe app. They actually took the time to restore those. I actually went back to the original film and actually restored all those, and they look absolutely fantastic. So if you have the DC Universe app, it's totally worth checking out. It's definitely a nostalgia trip watching those for sure.
Now, back when we were talking about Legends of the Dark Knight, Bobby was asking if that was Mark Hamill, and no, Mark Hamill didn't play the Joker in that episode. So we'll figure it out. But no, Mark Hamill played the Joker in every other episode, but not that one. Yeah, not that specific one.
And that Joker's meant to go back to the classic golden age, like the Dick Sprang interpretation and version of the Joker. And that episode's a lot of fun.
And then also, I think Man of Sand came in late, but Man of Sand,
we brought that up earlier in the show.
Yeah,
during the pop culture news segment, we talked about the entire cast of Masters of the Universe Revelation, the Kevin Smith produced series for Netflix. I am very, very excited and looking forward to that. I'm a big Masters of the Universe fan. I have been for years. I've tortured several people with my own interpretation pitch idea for Masters of the Universe, including Eric. Eric has unfortunately had to sit through that long-winded, crazy pitch. I see.
And I have some ideas
Dr.
about that,
Strange.
by the way. So.
I didn't realize you were such a Masters of the Universe fan.
Not so much a fan of the Master Universe, but I am a fan of Skeletor.
I don't think we can hear. Can everyone else hear Dr. Strange? I can't hear him.
I can hear him. I heard him say he's a fan of Skeletor.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Skeletor, but not so much as the He-Man, as you say.
And I do want to mention for anybody that was coming in late and didn't see before, Man of Sam asked, said Filmation's most famous hero may have been He-Man, which is going to be revived as a series on Netflix. We did talk about that in our news segment. And if anybody wants to maybe do a replay, once this is posted, they can go back.
Hold
on. Okay. Dave is having some technical issues. But if anybody wants to go back, you can actually, once this is posted, you can go back and watch the beginning of the episode, or you can wait. And usually within a day, within 24 hours, what I do on YouTube is I actually break up the show by topic. So you can always come back and maybe you can just, watch that segment when we were talking about Master of the Universe. So if anybody who missed the first part of the show, you've got two options there. One is just to wait when this thing posts, which is usually just like a couple minutes after we're gone. And then you can go back and look at the beginning of the episode, or you can wait until I chop up the episode by topic and you can go see it that way.
Sorry about that, everyone. My headphones suddenly decided to stop working.
It happens. Technical difficulties.
I like these Bluetooth headphones, but I tell you, they keep doing this stuff, and it's so annoying. I don't understand why I did that. They just went dead. Sorry about that.
It happens. Technical difficulties. It's technology. So.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that feeling all too well. My laptop is handed to me by Arkham, and this is why I'm using my phone.
Hey, Man of Sand has another interesting comment. He said, I noticed that Filmation's transformation scene for He-Man almost seems derived from Filmation's transformation scene from Shazam. That's some interesting insight there. That's
He-Man is
very
much a collection of like Filmation's greatest hits. I think that's part of why He-Man works so well. They were able to take all these different elements and different approaches that work so well in all the other cartoons and actually use them to help bring He-Man to life. So
that's an interesting observation, especially because I think I only saw that intro just now when you showed it, and yeah, I kind of agree with you, Manisan. That is there's something there. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Are we ready to move on to our last Joker here?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. Well, this is the big one for me. So let me get my notes back up because I did actually prepare something. So the dark reinvention of Batman in the 1970s and the wildly successful Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns in the 80s ushered in yet both a return to form and a new kind of evil for the Joker. This leads us to Jack Nicholson's performance as the Joker in Warner Brothers' 1989 classic, Batman. Nicholson was asked by the producers to actually be the Joker while he was actually filming Witches of Eastwick. The two most commonly known things concerning this version of the Joker in the 89 Batman film concern the nature of Jack's deal and and it actually kind of overshadows his tremendous performance. So the first thing I always hear people bringing up constantly over and over again is basically his back-end deal. To make a long story short, because the producers could not pay him what he really wanted, they basically had to make a back-end deal for points. And this actually made him a fortune due to the success of the film. I think it's part of the reason that Jack doesn't shy away. Like if you have the 89 Batman Blu-ray, Jack Nicholson is on all the behind-the-scenes stuff, talking about the Joker. He's got a little Batman 89 lapel pin on it, and he seems very proud of his work on the 89 film. I think it is one of his. I think it is one of his probably most memorable, and for me personally, one of his best performances. But he's just very proud of it, and he likes to celebrate the fact that he was involved in this. And I think that's really cool because a lot of times on the when you watch even later years, you watch these behind the scenes DVDs and stuff. Oftentimes these actors of his caliber, they're not even on them. For example, like Keaton is nowhere except in previous file footage. That's the only way that he's actually included in a lot of that behind the scenes stuff. But a lot of the stuff with Jack is new, and it's just really interesting to see that. But I think it's because of that back end deal. I mean, this is a very good payday for him. And that's one of the things that people, constantly bring up, like on the street, like civilians. It's one of the things they constantly bring up. And the second one was that he famously told Michael Keaton when they were basically getting makeup and stuff applied before they went out to film, he said, "Just let the wardrobe do the acting, kid." Okay, so these are the things that civilians constantly bring up to me about the 89 movie in relation to Nicholson's performance. And these seem to be the things he's most remembered for, besides his powerhouse performance. And I'm just going to tell everyone right now, I'm going to go on the record by saying I'm sick of hearing about him, personally. I get it. I would rather talk about the importance of his performance, because it is this one that begins to run back to the source material and even The Man Who Laughs. And it's eerily dark and tortured view of the world. And while having fun and chewing the scenery with his performance, without Nicholson, we would never get the radical reinvention that Heath Ledger's take on the character would be, and definitely not Joaquin Phoenix's masterful turn as the character as well. All other portrayals, in my opinion, of the Joker prior to this 89 version, they were basically stuck with the 66 Batman Clown Prince of Crime interpretation. It is very much Nicholson's fun, dark, and threatening version that is the breakthrough. Without this crucial bridge for the character, I doubt that the character would be such a daring and mesmerizing figure, and that the later portrayals of the Joker, I don't I don't think we'd have them, and I don't think we'd have performances that were so great that they would put the Joker in contention with, like, Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs as such a powerful, memorable, and important movie villain. So I can't state enough the importance of Nicholson's Batman, his performance in Batman as the Joker. It's so crucial. It's so crucial. And you can tell he's having fun too. I mean, it shows a lot of fun to play this character. But as we said before, looking at The Man Who Laughs, Tim Burton also, the way that he crafted this version of the Joker with Jack Nicholson, and the way that, whether Nicholson was aware of it or not, the way that they took elements from The Man Who Laughs and merge it into this version, so that it's not just a great version of the Joker from the comics, but it's also just a great version and interpretation, taking those various elements from The Man Who Laughs and kind of bringing them and reincorporating them into the character. It's just really interesting and just tremendous.
Man of Sand asks, how much of that version was due to Tim Burton? I think that's a good question, because I do think Tim Burton had a lot to do with this, and I think possibly the disfigurement, that might be because of Tim Burton's background and liking horror and all that kind of stuff and the sort of gothic thing. I think that might have been why. I don't know, but I think that might have been why we got the disfigurement. Is because he had seen The Man Who Laughs. He knew the history of the character, and I highly suspect that's why he's disfigured.
No, yeah, I would be willing to put money on the table that it's Tim Burton's influence that, like I said, that kind of brings elements from The Man Who Laughs back to the Joker, because the '66 version, whatever was there that might have been in the original comics, it's gone. By the time that Romero was done with it. And with the '89 Batman film, all those elements are brought back and kind of merged back with the Joker. And like I said, without this bridge, we would never get the later interpretations. So tell us, again, I want to thank Dr. Hugo Strange for being on the show tonight. So tell us, Dr. Strange, how does this interpretation of the Joker for the '89 Batman film, how does this portrayal, is it close to your patient that you had at Arkham? Is this maybe one of the closer, or was your patient that you had at Arkham, was he very different from this version?
This one's very similar, actually. This is when he missed his medication.
Okay.
I'll never forget that day either. He left me a note saying, "Roses are red, violets are blue. Dead robins are too." And not soon afterwards, there was a circus nearby, and it exploded.
Wow. It's very dark. Very dark.
Very dark.
Yeah.
Very dark.
Well, that's Joker. So, akin to Jack Nicholson, I mean, he had his theatrics down, his just maniacal way of thinking. I mean, he was there just pure anarchy, just there just to mess things up, but yet he was also very organized. He was a mastermind. He wanted to, just take over the crime scene in Gotham. And this is a little bit more fresh in my mind since I actually got to see it at the Fathom events. Got to see it in theaters. I think it's my first time actually. But he was downright terrifying, kind of like the Joker. I mean, you just never knew. I mean, him laughing, just like walking around, I mean, that was just kind of struck fear into me a little bit.
Interesting. Interesting. So you would say that this version is definitely much closer to your patient, the actual real Joker, than probably some of the other ones we've discussed so far.
Yes, due to, I mean, he had the chemical change. He's a murderous psychopath, and he has a big thing for the theatrics. So I mean, it's It all makes sense. I mean, it's actually thinking about this, it's probably one of the most accurate versions we've had.
Interesting. So it looks like we do have another comment.
Yes, and I can say I remember reading about this, and Man of Sam says also around the same time was Frank Miller's comic. Did that possibly influence Tim Burton? Absolutely, I can answer that. That's 100% that Frank Miller's comic had a huge influence on the Tim Burton Batman. Huge.
Well, and Frank Miller's influence on all the various iterations of Batman looms incredibly large. Whether you're talking about Dark Knight Returns or you're talking about Batman Year One, it's definitely definitive for the character. Sometimes when people are interested in reading Batman comics, but they've never read a lot of comics, typically the two that I'll start them off with is okay, well, here's Batman Year One, start with this. This is the beginning of Batman. Here's the Dark Knight Returns. This is how the story ends, in case you were curious. It's just kind of, and that material is so strong and so great. It's
Joker didn't see this coming in Dark Knight.
Yeah, that's true.
I will say though that one thing, and I can't find it. I have the graphic novel version of. I think it's like the first 4 or 6, Bob Kane Batman stories, like the very first, like 4 or 5 issues of Detective Comics before Batman spun off into his own series. I do recommend that one too. If you're someone who's not read Batman, start at the beginning, literally, because that stuff was pretty interesting. That's when Batman had a gun, things like that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's interesting too, because a lot of people you don't really think about how the various adaptations of the characters into different media, like we don't really get Alfred in the context that we think of, until later,
much later, yeah, because Alfred, the original version of Alfred, he just showed up like after Batman's. He wasn't like his father. He didn't serve the Waynes. He just showed up later and just was, Bruce Wayne's butler.
Yeah.
So they've and I love Alfred. I think the interpretation of Alfred as like a surrogate father and stuff like that. I love that version, but that's not how Alfred started out.
It's interesting that a lot of things that we think of as being classic to the characters, these always come later as other people add to it. It's the power of collaboration that eventually leads us, to this place. And it's very interesting.
The other funny thing is, just a little bit of trivia there is, there's only one other character, with Batman's family, if you will, Batman's big cast of characters. There's only one other character as old as Batman. There's only one. It's not Robin. Robin's not in the first appearance of Batman. It's not the Joker. He's not in the first appearance of Batman. The only one that is Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon is the same age as Batman, and I love Commissioner Gordon. So he was there from the beginning, though. So that's why Commissioner Gordon's so important, because he was there from the very beginning, very first panel, I think. Even.
So tell us, Dr. Strange, just out of curiosity, we over the course of Batman's career, we've seen lots of different versions of the Joker, and we've seen lots of different iterations and versions of Commissioner Gordon. Has any one of those versions of Commissioner Gordon been closer to the actual police commissioner in Gotham City that you've actually worked with? Who was probably the closest?
Probably the one from the Nolan films.
So we're talking about the Gary Oldman, the actor Gary Oldman?
Yeah, it's Gary Oldman. It's definitely the closest one. Definitely not the one from the Burton films, and Gotham, we won't even speak of that show.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. We're very lucky to have Dr. Strange here actually fact-checking the realities of what it's actually like in Gotham City versus what sometimes we've seen in various media where we're talking about television shows or movies. Very cool.
Fake news, man. Fake news.
That's right. That's right. We're all about the real down and dirty about what's happening in Gotham City, not that fake news.
That's right.
Very cool. So is that good for 89? Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
Well, the thing for me with this version of the Joker is I remember that there were two things that stuck out. First of all, I already addressed the disfigurement issue, and I remember people kind of wigging out about that and being like, "Oh, that's not the comics," and find out later, well, that predates the comics. It's actually the origin of the character. The other one is the controversial decision to have the Joker kill, Bruce Wayne's parents. A lot of people hated that, but that does absolutely influence Joaquin Phoenix's performance, because Joaquin Phoenix also indirectly killed Bruce Wayne's parents. So,
which I thought was actually good.
So, but I think that's an interesting link between the Jack Nicholson Batman and the Joaquin Phoenix. I'm sorry, the Jack Nicholson Joker and the Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
Yeah, it's an interesting connection.
Yeah.
The thing that was really interesting for me personally, prepping for this show and watching and preparing and getting all these notes together and everything, is just the interesting journey of the character. How it starts out, how it deviates, and how it comes back, and how it kind of comes full circle. But how every person that adds another little piece, eventually gets us, to where we eventually wind up with two of the best, portrayals of the Joker in live action, in my opinion. I think, that personally, our next episode, we're going to get into two of just the most mesmerizing, amazing interpretations of the Joker. For me personally, they're just very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think in part two, we're gonna come across my personal definitive Joker. We'll do that in part two. He's going to be one of our part two, and then also you touched on this, Dave, but Man of Sand said Cesar Romero held a press conference during the 1989 movie release, complaining that its version of the Joker. And that earlier when we were talking about that.
I hate to say this, Cesar Romero, but the Joker is violent.
That's true.
Yeah, Cesar Romero's Joker usually got beat up all the time. That's one thing I remember was he didn't do a lot of the beating on. He usually got beat up, so.
He was the high school bully Joker, like I said.
That's true. That's true. No, yeah, I did touch on that. Actually, the particular interview I referenced was actually CBS This Morning, and it's an older interview clip, and in it, Cesar Romero talks about the fact that reviewers were saying not to take your children to see the '89 film because of its violent content. And it's not just the violent content. I mean, there's a lot of dark humor and interesting choices they made, which makes the Joker more interesting, as an older viewer, let's say at least of a certain age, to watch it. But along those same lines too, maybe the '89 movie's tame now, by today's standards. But yeah. You look at, we talked about The Man Who Laughs at the beginning of all this from 1928. They were concerned about the sexual boldness of that film. And most of it's just this lady laying on a bed. She's fully clothed. you know? I mean,
times
wearing more
have changed.
They have. So.
And then Man of Sam said Cesar Romero was a villain in various Disney movies too. And he specifically mentions the computer wore tennis shoes. Are you familiar with that?
No.
I'm not familiar with that one. The computer wore tennis shoes. Yeah, I don't know that one, unfortunately.
I don't know that one.
It must be Brainiac.
He says it was pretty campy as villains go, which I would assume.
Yes.
I mean, that
would make sense.
That's the portrayal that Cesar Romero did. I mean, it was campy. So.
Yeah. That's for sure. So is that good for our part one here, covering the Jokers?
Yeah, we just want to make sure that everybody knows we are doing a part two. So if we didn't cover, we're going in chronological order. So if we didn't cover your favorite Joker, because we didn't cover mine yet either, stay tuned. Come back Wednesday, and we're going to get into all the other ones up to Joaquin Phoenix.
And we'll announce on the next episode, we'll announce the winner of the Joker sketch card. We'll have another sketch card, another prize giveaway for people participating in the chat on the next episode. So we'll announce the winner of this, and we'll also officially announce the winner of this here. This is some sample inks I did. This is the actual ink on board from Brightest Day. We'll announce the winner of this for those people who took the time to fill out the survey and help us by giving us some information to help us create a better show for you, our dear valued viewer and our dear valued listener. So yeah, we'll be announcing both of those on the next episode as well. I think actually in a weird way, I think I know what you're going to say is your definitive version of the Joker, Eric. And it is definitive. And while I like all these different interpretations of the Joker, I'm going to say Nicholson's probably mine. I just love his take on the Joker. Yeah,
interesting.
It's just the whole way it's put together. I really like it. You know, I know some people take issue with the whole, well, Joker didn't kill Batman's family. That was Joe Chill. It's like, yeah, I know that. But I just really, really enjoy Nicholson's take on the Joker. I always have. So.
I do too. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love his interpretation of the Joker, but he's not my definitive Joker. That's all I'm saying.
No, I understand. And I'm just saying he may not be, even in terms of the comics or whatever, he may not be the definitive Joker. You know, when you look at it and you look at the different portrayals and you look at the comics, like I'm one of those weird nerdy people that considers the comics the source material and that we should, you know, pay sometimes more reverence to it than sometimes we do. But I'd have to say, I think Nicholson's Joker is probably my favorite, my personal definitive Joker. I love the '89 film. I always have, and there's so much interesting stuff. And at the time in which Nicholson did this, it was so amazing because it broke so far from the campy interpretation from the '66 television series. And like I said, Romero's legacy looms so large because the influence of the '66 series, it carries over. And I mean, every version, because as a kid, you know, I still have it. I still have my old Power record, you know, Batman stories. I still have a lot of that material. I still have the Fisher Price, the Laughing Sphinx, you know, story with the cassette tape and the book, and you flip through the page. It's like I still have all those things. I kept them because I've loved them since I was a child. But all those interpretations of the Joker, regardless of who did it, it's all Romero. It's all Cesar Romero, you know, carrying all the way through to the cartoons. We don't get a radical departure until Nicholson. And it's with what Nicholson does, his ideas and Tim Burton's ideas. It is that really gives us the opportunity to eventually have the amazing performances from, you know, people such as, you know, Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, just without him to bridge the gap, I don't know if they would have taken it as far. I think someone might have taken it as far as Nicholson did, but I don't know if they would have taken it as far. Wow, you aren't kidding, Dr. Strange. You do have therapy cats in there.
I do.
And Man of Sand seems to agree with you because he says Nicholson certainly was a standout landmark Joker.
I would definitely agree with that assessment.
And also, PJ mentioned with your art earlier. That's beautiful, Dave, in terms of the art you were showing earlier.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The whole point is just to encourage people to be part of what we're doing here. But I do appreciate the comment. Thank you very much.
And Man of Sand also had a question about your background. He said, "Dave, are you a graphic artist?"
Well, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer for over 30 years. And I'm not going to bore you with my tagline because I'll be getting to that soon enough. But yeah, I've worked for most of the major comic companies as an inker, as a colorist, and of course I've self-published and co-created a lot of comic titles I'm quite proud of, things that you maybe not have never heard of, things such as Bushy Tales, my current project, Red Skirts, Dark Meat, which is actually a Batman parody about a chicken who believes he's Batman, which actually serves as industry commentary of all things. So yeah, but I've been doing it for a little while. So I appreciate all the positive comments on my artwork, and it's I've enjoyed doing it, and I've been very lucky. There's been some ups and some downs over the course of my career. Not everything's always come up roses, but I've been very fortunate and lucky to be able to be a professional working artist pretty much my entire professional career. So.
He also asked, have you ever considered motion comics?
I have. Primarily going back to when CrossGen was doing so much of it. CrossGen, which is a studio based out of Oldsmar, Florida, they were doing a lot of that early work when you could go to Toys R Us and buy DVDs that had motion comics on them. Things like Way of the Rat stands out. And I've got a bunch of them over there. Ruse. Darn, what was the really good fantasy one? I can't remember the name of it. My eyesight's gotten so bad I can't read it from over here. But no, motion comics are very interesting. Animation is something that I quite love. And most of my animation stuff and motion stuff I've done has mostly been, for web ads and stuff like that. So I've normally, this is turning into an interview about me, which we don't want to do, but normally,
yeah, he asked the question. So
I know. Normally for me, comics is something that I do in addition to whatever my day job is. So if I'm working as a graphic designer at a printing company or a newspaper or whatever that is, when I come home, the comics is something I do for fun at night. And I am an old school retro. I love the classic way things are done. So, and also too, I'm always trying to find a faster, more efficient way to do something so I can get something done faster and quicker and not have it take longer. So I haven't done a lot of stuff with motion comics primarily because it's always a question of time. And how much can I get done in the time I have available to me? Because normally 9 times out of 10, I'm trying to do too much. So that's usually where it falls. So I usually choose to stay true to the classic comic book art styles and forms in order to hopefully get a little bit more done. Now, the departure from that would be I haven't always done that. Red Skirts actually, here. Oh, you know what? It's not going to be on this machine, but it may actually be on my jump drive. I can, if I have the files on my jump drive, I can actually talk about something that is indirectly related to our show topic here if I can find it. And of course, that just disappeared on me. Bring that back.
Hey, Man of Sam was saying that he thinks a good motion comic can easily outdo a badly drawn cartoon. I wanted to mention that I don't have a lot of experience with motion comics, but I have something interesting that I think our viewers would be interested in. Years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, Stan Lee was doing a motion comic. It was called Time Jumper, and he was doing it with Disney when Disney was first getting into streaming, or where they wasn't streaming yet. It was when they were first getting into digital content that you could download on your phone. And this was a series that Stan Lee was going to do, and they had him at San Diego Comic-Con, and he was signing these. So you can see at the bottom there, I have the late great Stan Lee's signature from the motion comic that he did for Disney before even the internet was a really big thing. So that's a little bit of my experience with motion comics.
Okay, so we'll see how well this works. So what I've got here, I'm going to pull up, if you'll share my screen. Some people have seen this, some people haven't. I'll try and go through this real quick. At one point, I was going to be pretty heavily involved in actually a motion comic project that we were actually going to, Scott Clark and I were actually in the process of pitching to Warner Brothers and DC Comics. And the idea is going to be a motion comic, was going to be an app. And the idea was to do something kind of different with Batman. Now, I like the interpretation of Mr. Freeze. It comes to the animated series where his condition eventually deteriorates his body. And then so what we think of him as a man in a suit, it turns out it's more just like some organs and a head, and the suit is like a robot. So these are actually unfinished concept designs actually for our interpretation of what Mr. Freeze's suit would look like. This is what his gun weapon would have looked like. His freeze gun. Some other people see this now. We did build a fully rigged CGI model for Batman for this project. Some people have seen some of these images. Some people have not. This version of this CGI Batman we later used and modified for Batman Incorporated. There's a classic Batman Incorporated cover for Nightmares in Numberland. It's one of the issues that Scott Clark and I worked on with Grant Morrison. And this CGI model that we built for this Batman motion comic app that we were pitching to Warner Brothers and DC was later repurposed for that. Here's a shot of Batman running across the rooftop. Let's see. I can't quite get to my toolbar. This was a test I did for the bat signal. Just part of the pitch, trying to figure out how it would look and figure out the style. Some more test images. This is a really horrible concept for the Batmobile that we're going to move past. Another image of the CGI Batman model that we built that was fully rigged. And I thought you would find this interesting, Eric. We were talking about Batman's ears.
Yeah.
And Scott and I had a lot of conversations for what makes a definitive Batman head. And these are actually Scott's notes based with some of my feedback. We were going through what actually makes the definitive Batman head. That some people might actually find this interesting, that we used to take things to this extreme, constantly refining and building upon something to make it as iconic and definitive as he humanly possibly can. So there you go. It's all from a aborted, abandoned Batman motion comic project. It was actually going to be a standalone app. It was going to be sort of like a one part like choose your own adventure. You know what I mean? Where you kind of go along with Batman and have this journey and mystery story. So yeah, so there you go. Something basically I don't think a lot of people have seen. But enough about that. I feel like we're getting way off.
It's very, very, very cool, Dave. It's very cool stuff.
Thanks. Absolutely.
So is that good for this episode? Does anyone else have anything else they want to add? Or
well, I wanted to ask Dr. Strange if we have covered the most accurate Joker yet. Dr. Strange, have we covered the most accurate Joker yet?
I am not sure yet. I have to rewatch The Dark Knight to find out. As in terms of combining theatrics with, murderous psychopath, I mean, yes, on that term, but it really depends on which version of Joker we're talking about here.
Well, if you're available, maybe you can come back for the next episode and we can continue our discussion until we land on the definitive Joker, the one that's as closest to, of course, you're a former patient at Arkham Asylum.
I can tell you which one isn't.
Which one isn't?
Oh, that would be curious. Which one is not?
Jared Leto.
Okay.
Now we know we really do have the real Hugo Strange on the show, because that's we know that's true. We know that's true.
Very cool. All right, is that good for this episode? Anything else anyone else wants to add? Okay, very cool. All right.
I'd like to add one more thing.
Yes.
Batmite. I do have a friend I want to give a shout out to who absolutely despises Batmite. Howard the Duck, Spirit of Vengeance.
Okay.
And if you want to know more about that, you can listen to the Saturday Night Gaming podcast on the weekends. Tune in. It's SN Gaming 2017. It's my favorite podcast to listen to as well.
All right. Well, there you go. Shout out and recommendation from Dr. Hugo Strange for some other interesting, fun, creator-controlled content to check out on the interwebs. That's the kind of stuff that we're all about around here. So that sounds very cool. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Strange, for being on the show. Keep thinking you should be performing some magic. Awesome. Awesome. So I want to thank everyone for hopefully watching and listening to this episode of Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty, and I've been one of your hosts. If you're curious to learn more about me, see some of my artwork, if you haven't had enough of it already in this episode, I apologize for all that. You can go to my website where you can torture yourself with it for endless hours of entertainment. Again, my website is at davebeatty.com. That's www.davebeatty.com. I don't have to do it because this is a video show, not an audio show, but I'm going to keep doing that anyway because I haven't come up with anything better yet. I want to thank Eric Alexander for being back and performing all the wonderful co-host duties that he does. Please, Eric, tell the viewers at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs as well.
Well, depending where you're viewing this, you may be seeing this on my YouTube, which is BaseGod14, BASGOD14. You may be watching it on Twitter, which is my Twitter handle, which is also BaseGod14. Or I believe that's also our Twitch. On Facebook, we are under the Retrospective Facebook page. So I'm most active on Twitter. So it's pretty easy to remember. Again, it's at BaseGod14. I'm most active there. I'm most accessible there. My DMs are open. So anybody wants to talk, I'm there.
Very cool. Very cool. So again, I want to thank everyone for hopefully watching. And I want to thank all of our commenters. Again, we'll be announcing the winner of the sketch card on the next episode, as well as the winner of those who participated in our survey. If you have not participated in our survey and you would like to do it, I will not be cutting that off until probably sometime tomorrow. So you do still have this evening if you choose to do it, although we're running out of evening as we speak. That's at my website. You just go to the website, davebeatty.com. You'll take you directly to the latest news. That's the section for the various blog posts. You just want to scroll down and find the Retro Rogues 2020 survey. So again, I want to thank everyone for watching, and hopefully you will come back next week for part 2 of our Joker Actor Retrospective, where we will discover which one of the actors who portray the Joker is Eric's definitive, and maybe we may learn more about another one that's maybe not quite so definitive, as well as talk about some of the Oscar-turning performances that have actually been attributed to the character of the Joker as well. So we hope that you would join us then. And until next time, I'd like to say same batch time, same bat channel, but more like join us for the next Joker podcast.
And thank you, Amanda Sam, for your kind words. You said, thanks for a great show, guys. I'll try to remember to come back for your part 2 next week. And please do come back. Amanda Sam, you did a great job. You contributed to this show very well. And I think with that, we'll give our viewer the last word.